on it.
Which
This,
we didn't pay it.
oh,
If you-
this,
Yeah,
Oh.
Jerry paid out of his pocket.
oh.
Look at the two total.
Oh, you're
amounts,
right,
see
you're
the
right,
taxes
sorry, I just
removed.
saw
Yep,
the
Yep.
receipt.
We removed it.
I will,
We didn't pay it.
oh, yes. Oh.
Jerry paid out of his pocket.
Oh,
Just so you know,
okay,
but that we will only need them for some things.
okay.
Good evening, everybody. Town of Rochester audit meeting is called to order. Present are Supervisor Baden, Councilwoman Hagen Depew, and Councilwoman Anowen. Absent are Councilman Paddock and Councilman Hewitt. And we will be paying the bills, and once that is completed, we will begin the workshop portion of the meeting.
Do we have a clerk for the meeting?
Christina's coming.
Okay.
I told her there was no point in her to come and sit and watch you guys sign the bills, so she'll be here about 6:15, 6:30. And Adam will be joining us, but
You said he's gonna be.
he's gonna be
a
late.
minute.
Yeah,
What part of
coming
the
in.
state is he in tonight? Where is he?
He's here in Eckerd. He just had meetings right up until 6 o'clock, and so he said he'd be leaving his house right about 6. And then they're leaving for vacation tomorrow, so. I don't remember. He told me, but I don't remember.
And so now the meetings are kind of the same. If we were to want to join remotely, we'd have to publish our location. Kind of,
Well, we have to actually pass a local law first to allow it to happen.
right.
Then you would have to publish your location, and it would have to be in a location that the public can
Right,
access.
yeah,
So you couldn't sit in your house.
right.
You would have to be in a public library or somewhere where the public can observe you if they choose to.
What, like, we were doing if we got caught in a car, for instance?
That wouldn't,
Yeah, we can't.
right now, we
we
can't,
do
it's
that.
not legal the way it is right now.
So you can't go to Aruba and say, here I am on the beach?
Well, you can if we adopt the local law, which is what the legislature did for one of the legislators who was on his honeymoon in somewhere in one of the islands. And they published that location, and anybody who wanted to go watch him from there had to be allowed to. He was in a hotel ballroom, meeting room. They arranged it with the hotel. It was so, because he had perfect attendance, never, his entire time on the legislature, never missed a meeting, and he wanted to continue it. So,
That's nice.
yeah.
I think Zoom was a little less complicated.
It wasn't even Zoom then. I don't know how they did it.
No,
then,
I don't know
so.
what they did then, but I mean. what
But
we
the
did-
state is actually considering, the state legislature is considering, because of this, modifying the laws to allow remote access. But until they do, you have to be present. Or you have to have adopted a local law to allow a secondary meeting location. And then that has to be published in the newspaper as a secondary location.
We don't have a sign sheet for the highway.
No, we never do, because Tina gives us the vouchers, and so they're not entered into the computer. What I've been doing is Tina's sheet, if you want to sign at the bottom of that, and that'll be your verification. The other ones are done because Tim enters them in the computer. With the highway, it's presented to us before he gets a chance to enter it. So. But I did ask the Mary Lou, and the initials on the vouchers, we actually don't have to sign that sheet, but the initials on the vouchers
Cover, but
are covered. But since we have it, we never used to have that sheet. Karen started
I know.
printing that one, and now Tim's continued. So it's a better backup to just confirm that
Yeah.
the numbers match up. And I still run my tape against their tapes to make sure they match as well.
You're not recording the meetings anymore.
No,
Okay, okay,
No. But I mean, we're out on YouTube
yeah,
and
so that's,
the YouTube will still be there. We will be recording it on our little tape recorder that we
right,
normally would.
for
record
the,
on.
for
Yeah,
the minutes.
yeah.
And I have some recordings that I need to get to Nicole, I guess,
Well,
or you.
you should probably come to me or
Okay.
Kate,
Okay.
because ultimately Kate is the one.
All right, I will do that. Be happy to get them off my computer.
I guess we can tell Adam and Chris they can either have the backs to the camera or they could bring the chairs around the other side and have the backs to us and be on the camera.
I haven't come over to see all of them.
It's a good shot. I mean, if we get a long carpet runner, we could go it down the middle, but in a heavily traffic meeting, I would be worried.
I'd
that
want somebody to
would-
sit next to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, once, I'm looking forward to seeing if our usuals come tonight. The people that used to. come.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They didn't always come to the workshops, but sometimes they did.
And then we have our July meeting next week.
Yep. ECC canceled their meeting Tuesday. Madeline's going to be away and several other people couldn't come, and they actually were all set up to Zoom it. And then
Right.
I emailed her last night and said, can't Zoom it anymore. So she said, well, let me just poll people. So they just decided to cancel it this month. And
Right.
they were going to have somebody from Cornell come and
Yeah.
talk about, so they're just going to reschedule that
Right.
for next month.
But there's no other meeting that night.
There is, the Palentown Cemetery Association
Oh,
had asked if they could use it Tuesday, and I forgot that there was a meeting that night of the ECC. So I said, yes, they could. Plus, at the time I said, yes, I thought it was good. The ECC would be Zoomed.
Right.
So I told them it was okay, and I didn't want to back out on that because they have to have an annual meeting every year of their board of directors. I guess it has to be public, so.
So this is just an informative pamphlet.
Yes, it was just basically right here.
Front
It
and
basically was an ad that they sent to us, but they sent me 5. They sent one to every board member.
Oh, that's nice. I
Yeah.
just kind of wondered, it's just an info.
Yeah. And they may not, they may not even realize that we're already one of their clients. So when I got it, I was like, yeah, we're already one of your clients.
But
But
that's nice.
yeah,
I like
I've never
it.
seen a clear envelope like that. I
never
love
did
it.
either. That's what I was gonna say. This is kind of worth hanging on.
Yeah, they came
I
in the
like
mail
that.
like that. And, but there were 1 addressed to each board member, so they clearly spent some money on advertising.
Yes.
We just haven't had anything to sell in a while with them. The last thing we sold was the dozer and the grader last year. It was last spring we sold them. Were you successful in finding batteries for the recorder?
No, well, yes, I was successful finding batteries. I had brand new batteries. Angie had brand new batteries. We had brand new batteries. Nothing
Not
worked,
working?
no.
Hmm.
So
I don't know why.
I'm SOL.
Can you use your phone? Is there anybody's phone we can use or something? Is
can-
that
I don't
allowable?
have memory on my phone.
Well, I'll just hit record on here then if we need it.
Look at this tan.
Look at
Oh,
look.
she's outside.
No, look.
I know. Kate says, are you wearing white stockings? No.
This is disgusting. My feet are not dirty. I swear it's a tan. We're not supposed to do this. Are we on camera?
Isn't that
We are,
funny?
we're being recorded.
Oh, boy.
You're out on YouTube.
I'm guilty. I plead guilty.
We're superstars.
Zoom has started informing you too when it's being
I
recorded.
like that. That is it.
Yeah. Right.
Just call them for a certified copy. I told Aaron about the signature.
Yeah,
I know.
yeah, I'll just call her and ask her to resend those 2. So we can, we'll just replace it with the, when we get the certified one. Much smaller number of bills, both number and amounts this year or this month.
This month.
Well, last month we had all the paving. That was 85,000 by itself. So, but we'll get all that back.
Yes.
Told Jeff, make sure he spends all that CHIPS money this year. We don't want to hold any over in case they take it back next year.
Well, I think that'll be the case because the price of things, for the paving, the oil, and everything have gone up.
Yeah,
The
well,
parts-
they allotted a lot more money toward CHIPS because they withheld that 20% last year. So they gave that back and they gave a significant increase. We don't know if next year the governor will be as generous or the legislature. So we know we have it until March of 2022. So Jeff's planning on adding, he's going to amend the agreement, the 284 agreement, and add some other roads that he was going to wait till next year to do originally, but now we got more money, he'll do it this year.
Have they stopped bringing the food waste?
I have to ask that question because we
Because
haven't,
it just said 0, and I noticed it on the last.
yeah, I
one.
know, I have to ask that question.
Okay.
I don't know if people just aren't bringing it or if they stopped bringing it. Yeah.
All right. I've never really researched this building either to see what facilities. I know what was supposed to be here, but I never researched it to see what was.
And we recently got the okay to go ahead with the water filtration system.
Oh, great.
So the price went up a little bit because,
The Culligan or something like
yeah,
that.
but the quote we got a year and a half ago, a new vendor bought the distributorship of the Culligan from the guy that we had gotten the original quote from. And the original guy didn't test the hardness of the water, and the new guy came and tested the hardness of the water, and he said, you need a different type of equipment, but it's only gonna be about $1,000 more, $1,200
Is
more.
that a one shot? Is that a one shot?
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to pay for the salt and, that stuff, but it will be paid for through.
Can they get?
Yep.
Okay.
Were you on the holder?
They were the prepaid. I believe.
Oh,
Yes,
okay.
they are.
Or they're on this side?
Welcome,
Yes.
Hey, how are you?
Yes,
Okay.
that is
have a seat.
Thank you. Hello.
correct.
We're paying the bills.
Yeah.
We are being broadcast out on YouTube, so you know. It's our
So
first
then-
attempt to do a
Okay.
live meeting out on YouTube and seems to be working. Yeah, there's the prepaid pile and the unpaid pile. Yeah, the way that purchase will be done is we'll pay the bill. And it's what's called a micro purchase. And then we'll get reimbursed for it. So it's about $8,700 installation of the system. In the system
Where does that reimbursement?
from GOSER, Governor's Office of Storm Control.
It's still
Yeah.
all part of the
Yeah.
package.
But because it's under a certain dollar amount, it's you don't have to go through the whole
The whole.
process of getting a change order. It's a micro purchase, they call it. There's a certain percentage that's set aside for these little
It's not a
incidental,
retainage or anything, it's just set aside.
yeah. It's in the contingency, but there was a contingency with amount of money set aside for anything that came up.
Right.
This is one of the things that came up. There was these water fountains installed that I never knew were coming in, and they didn't realize the water was not potable. So I said, well, if the water fountains are there, and they had to be because they were designed as part of the system. I said, then, so that ad, we'll pay the bill and get reimbursed from governor's office. At the final closeout, where they tie up all those little loose
Has
ends.
the contractor received his retainage?
That's what we're in that, he submitted that this past week.
That, you know, my reason for asking that.
Mhm. Yep, that was submitted this week, but it's,
I believe.
Yeah. but the closeout is being done right now by Gosser, finally. There was a lot of issues that arose just in getting because of the pandemic,
Yes,
with everybody all spread out from their end
yes.
in various offices and
Yeah, and I understand that. What
Yeah.
I'm asking is what went on, some of the things that went on.
yeah, there's really no,
There's no recourse.
there is, but we would have to go to court. So it's just not. It's not. It's not also not 100%, I don't believe, of what the original was.
So normally, I believe it's 5% that they hold.
No, I mean, it was
I
not
know,
100% of what was earmarked for
I
that.
got that. I understood that, but I'm saying to you, yeah. It's.
You're all set. You want to
Yeah.
put them over by Adam there, so.
I still have the small,
Okay.
the pirate stuff, but I want it to be ready.
We have these.
Yeah, there's the street lighting, the escrow. And then. Highway. Street lighting bills have gone down, and I'm not quite sure why. Well, part of it is through Nexamp.
Yeah.
We get a 10%
Right.
discount, but they've gone down more than 10%. I'm not sure why.
Maybe.
Maybe the prices actually dropped.
Because we haven't switched them all to,
Most of them are LED.
yeah,
There's only a few that are
yeah,
not LED.
at the end of,
Yeah,
Most of them were switched by Central Hudson.
right,
We didn't
yeah,
have
we didn't
to.
have to pay for
Yeah.
that.
Because Mercury Vapor. are terrible.
Yeah.
Sounds like most of
Yeah. When Aaron's done, we'll start because Adam said he would sign the bills as the meeting. He had a meeting until 6 o'clock, so
Oh,
when he's gonna sign the bills while we meet. But normally we plan an hour of time for signing the bills anyway. so.
Everybody has to get paid.
Well, this is, yeah, vendors,
vendors, these are them.
not payroll, but. Need 3 out of 5 board member signatures on every voucher in order to be able to pay it. And each board member gets the opportunity to view it and check it and ask questions. Yeah, it's only 6:30, not even.
Okay, I just forgot. There.
Yeah.
The A and M bill there was some highway charges that
Right.
got put on the general fund, so you're gonna see a voucher in there made out to the town of Rochester general fund. What we did is we paid the A and M bill with the general fund money, and then the highway is gonna write a check to reimburse it. Because to try to get them to pull one off and move it once it's already posted is extremely difficult.
Right.
So it's not on that bill, but there's another bill in there.
In the bigger set.
Yeah.
Right. The first one.
The problem is that when we pay them, they just apply the charge against the last known invoice. And so it's not always a one-to-one, because their bill usually comes about 3 days after we've paid the last set of bills, and there's always an overlap. So many times there's a whole long list of things on there that we've already paid. We go through and pull them off. But it's not a perfect system. But we've tried to ask if we can change our due date, and it just doesn't work for their system. So, not the due date, I'm sorry, the bill date, the close date.
I wonder if we could ask to have the vouchers separated, but I'll bet when it goes in.
They are separated. There's a general fund and
Oh,
they have two different accounts. Occasionally though, somebody
I
will
know some
hit the wrong
keys,
button.
the key won't.
Yeah, yeah, they are two separate accounts. The highway goes directly to highway and the general fund comes to us. We have the same thing with Napa.
Yeah, which you have to watch.
We have
for
the same thing with
signature,
Williams
who
Lumber.
signed, who signed, and hopefully.
But it only works if the person enters the right account on the other end, so. That's how we identified it. We looked at the signatures on the receipts and I was like, that wasn't anybody we know. And then we figured out it was one of the highway workers' signatures.
Do you have a sticky note?
I do not bring,
This has 20 cents tax on it.
Yes. There's a little space on there.
okay.
It's a highway.
Yeah.
Is it on the credit card?
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna have to pay it anyway, but we'll try to get it reimbursed.
Yeah.
Because if we don't pay that 20 cents, they'll charge us a $35
Right.
late
I,
fee.
s- what you had said earlier, I saw it.
So,
I just kind of didn't say anymore.
Yep.
Good for you.
good
Said
catch,
something.
so.
Yeah, I saw it, but I figured we were.
Yeah, that one I didn't see. I saw the Indeed one. I didn't notice that one.
That's okay.
You know, I'm just,
No, it's
Chris
good.
isn't here,
No,
so.
no,
Gotta step up my game.
it's what the rules are. We are not allowed to pay sales tax.
I know I noticed a lot of companies do, they charge us late,
Mhm.
and I'm wondering if that's some of their way around.
No, a lot of the
I've
highway
always-
stuff
I've
is,
always-
a lot of the highway stuff, and it's heavy.
Yeah,
Some of that is heavy when they're shipping it.
I just always have wondered that.
Yeah.
as long as-
Staples does not charge us delivery
do
charges,
not.
you know,
No,
office
Over
supply
50.
places don't.
over $50, something, is it? an amount
Yeah, I'm
over
not sure
something?
exactly. Staples doesn't. I don't believe WB Mason does. I think in the highway though, some of that is nuts and bolts and
Right.
if we didn't pay freight, we just end up paying more for the material. So. So what new car are you test driving now, Mark?
Dodge Charger.
Oh, was that the one I saw your post, your picture the other day? That looked like a nice vehicle.
Yeah.
Is it 100% electric?
No, oh God, no.
Oh.
That's a gas job.
Oh.
It sucks the gas pretty good.
Oh, really? I figured Charger. I don't know
Yeah.
anything.
No, that's, it's a car they've had out for a while.
Okay.
Nothing really special.
Name
The
of
Charger.
The
yeah.
Charger.
They had the
yeah.
Challenger,
Oh,
Charger,
okay,
the
okay.
old names from the 70s.
Mark has a
Well,
great job. He
They
writes,
should rebrand
Yeah,
and make it an electric vehicle.
that's a good name for it, right? They
he
probably have
writes a
trademark.
column where he gets brand new vehicles to test drive and then writes a newspaper column, a syndicated newspaper column about these vehicles. So he gets these manufacturers drop off these really nice vehicles to Mark's house.
Yeah.
And he gets to drive them for what, a week?
Yeah, it's great because Bob Gatos and I are really close. So I'll go down to Bob and he'll be like, oh, look at that, man. Could you imagine having to fix that? You know, all the new things that are coming out. It's-
Bobby's very good.
He sees all the, we don't see the hard things. He sees the,
Yeah.
oh, that's a disaster to fix, whatever.
That's how my stepfather would have been that way.
Yeah.
Well, your
Yeah,
dad
yeah,
knows, yeah.
My
he's-
dad looks at it and goes, oh,
Yeah, yeah.
that's got 5 different colors of paint on it, it takes 3 days to paint that car.
Bobby's a wealth of knowledge.
Yeah,
He and your dad have been friends with him.
Forever.
Wow.
forever. That's a great guy. I like it. Yeah, it's a little noisy on the main road, but
We have 2 culverts, Katum, Katum.
yeah.
Yeah.
Hear the trucks going by,
Yeah, early, I live up.
Yeah.
By college.
Yeah, yeah.
And, yeah, we get the.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear them going by. They don't wake me up, which is good, but definitely hear them during the day.
Oh,
Yeah.
But I'm so used to it.
Yeah, it does.
Lot of years. Lot of years now.
I'm always amazed how much noise you can hear where I am off of 209.
Can you hear the racetrack?
Once in a while,
Once in a while.
Not
It
that
depends on which
often,
way the wind's blowing.
but you get,
That's right.
I get, it just comes out over those fields there behind me. And
That's what it does.
you get the tire noise of the
Trucks.
trucks on
Yeah.
209.
Yeah.
I can only
higher.
assume it must
It
be
comes this
209.
way.
My problem is I'm always at the track, so I can't hear it from the house.
Did you get involved in tires or anything like you did?
No, I don't want anything to do with it. Nope. I can look at some of these tires and tell you if you need them or not, but I don't want to
You
know.
never
anything
went
about
that
it.
direction.
Nope, that was my brother.
Okay,
No, I'm in finance. I don't know anything about tires.
very good. Very good.
Yeah, your brother's there, right? With the business?
Yeah. Dad, Scott knows everything.
Because I go up with Feinberg. also,
Sure,
so
right.
I know Jay pretty well.
Yep.
What's that?
Yes, but I'm gonna.
Yep. Catch up.
Aaron has an empty position. I came in with something into the pages that mid-month.
Yeah.
Mark, are you aware of what was on it? When there was
Yes.
to be there?
The little farmhouse.
It was a farmhouse that was owned by Mrs. Moore, and she had boarders.
She was,
Gentlemen boarders who were alone.
and she was an O'Brien and then an Andrews, I believe.
Maybe that's correct.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
It's been, I looked at the deed and it's been the Andrews family all the way since 1870.
Yeah, it's been there.
My dad remembers when the house burned down.
I remember some of that, but, you know,
I think he said, I have it in my
a
thing. I think
portion of it. I don't know that it burned.
63, I think.
I don't think it burned to the ground, something in the back.
Right. And they weren't there and it was. all-
Yeah.
But the barn still is there.
Uh-huh.
The garage is still there. I talked to her on the phone a couple of weeks ago. I told her my plan, because when she put it up for sale, she didn't really know if she wanted to sell it. But then she did because the dad died, the mom died.
Okay.
So
that's-
this is the daughter. I live on. And when I told her my plan, she was okay. There's a lot I want to sell it to because I like what you're gonna do with my
See?
parents' property.
And you looked at the history.
Oh, yeah, yeah, before I even bought it.
That's nice.
The deed was actually, hand.
Really? I have a bunch of it.
Yeah.
All set? We'll get started. Okay, good evening, everybody. We'll call the June 24th workshop meeting to order. We'll stand for the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ask the deputy clerk to do the roll call, please.
Councilwoman Allen. Here. Councilwoman Hobbin Depew.
Here.
Councilman Hewitt. Councilman Paddock. Supervisor Baden.
Here. Okay, we have a quorum. We are expecting Councilman Paddock at some point. Councilman Hewitt will not be here this evening. His son is graduating and they are doing the van through the Roundup School District area tonight. So a moment to congratulate all the graduates of the 2021 class who'll be graduating tomorrow. Glad that they're able to have it in person. Okay, we have audited the monthly bills for the month of June. So the first item on our agenda is a discussion of a zoning designation change request. We have Mr. Grasso. If you want to, well, you can sit there in the front row.
Okay.
It's not like it's a
Would you like
huge.
Sure.
So,
So I have a little couple of notes, if that's okay, I'll start with, and then maybe take any questions. I'm hoping to answer a lot of your questions ahead of time. At the last board meeting, my request to change the existing zoning map for Beehive Road was presented. Although confusing at times, I appreciate the board letting me present my plans to you in person today in hopes of clearing up any questions you may have. The property in question is 35 acres at the end of Beehive Road. This property has been in the Andrews family since 1875 and was a vacation getaway for their whole family. Until the farmhouse burned down in 1968, the property has had many upgrades, a barn which still stands and is usable today, an existing well that is operable, and electric to the previously used home, garage, and shed. As shown in my proposal, 11 acres will be deeded to the neighbor due to an overlapping deed that is in court proceedings currently as a lis pendens has been filed. These 11 acres in questions will be given to the neighbor as the survey clearly shows it is their land. In my original application I submitted after consulting with Mr. Davis in the Code Enforcement Office, we looked at the zoning map together and felt that AR3 was a great request because neighboring properties were of the same zoning designation. Since then, we have recognized that the color designation of the Ulster County parcel viewer and the town of Rochester map do not match. With this, I have revised my originally submitted letter to reflect the request of gaining R2 zoning rather than AR3. Although my future lot sizes will still maintain above 3 acre lots, this designation makes more sense for town apparent reasons in consideration of spot zoning. Finally, with the reduced density request, I anticipate minimal impact to the land as most of the land in question for future development has already been cleared. Similarly, neighboring properties have similar densities and zoning designations as they are R2. With all of this in your presence, I have a packet of information. First, the original application I submitted on 4/14. Second, a request letter explaining my zoning requests and future plans. Third, the original plan for future subdivision and lot sizes. Fourth, the original survey. Fifth, a letter from Highway Superintendent Jeff Fry, who is in support of this change and future subdivision plans as it is a benefit to the town and the highway department congruently. A revised letter from me requesting the designation be changed from originally requested AR3 to R2 to match neighboring densities. And finally, a future map of potential subdivision showing the possibility of 6 lots rather than 5 pending engineering review. Additionally, on this, the current road and cul-de-sac, which is in red, and the proposed road extension, which is in blue. This road we brought up to town specifications as per my conversation with Jeff and town requirements. After reviewing my plans with the previous owner, the Andrews family and I have full support of and they love the idea. My plans for this prestigious piece of land is a 6-lot subdivision with an R2 zoning designation for future development. Hope that answers a lot of the questions since the last meeting.
Yes, and for the board, I spoke with our town attorney on Tuesday. She is on vacation, but she was back at home Tuesday evening. I did call her. You remember at the last meeting when we talked about this, we noted that surrounding properties were R2.
Yeah, so to
Yeah.
answer that question, when Jerry and I looked at the map was in yellow. We thought yellow was AR3. It is AR3. On the Ulster County map, green is considered green is considered R2. We were in green, which is AR3. That's why we went that route. Not for lack of, we were trying to go 3 acre lots, even though my future subdivision plans will be 3 acres or more. We felt our AR3 was just the right subdivision. Then noting that the neighbors were R2, and you guys mentioned it on the meeting last week.
Right.
I have no problem with R2 if that's what you guys
Well,
want to avoid the spotting.
what she recommends is that you, just based on the fact that your original ask was for AR3, that you amend your original zoning permit request to Mr. Davis. And then it seems like you have already amended your application to us here.
Correct. The
But,
letter is
yeah.
wrote here, so
Yeah.
I'll clear
Yeah.
the paperwork. with
But if
Mr.
you
Davis.
amend it with him, he'll forward a new request to us. Something else came up in my looking at this. You'll remember when we looked on the parcel viewer, our zoning map and the parcel viewer, there was a little strip next door to this property. If
That's
you look-
Mr. Wicks.
Yeah, if you look at our zoning map, it's Mr. Wick's property.
Where the satellite is on.
And for some reason, there is a piece of it that was R5 and the remainder was R2. I believe that it was an error when the original zoning map was made, and I'm gonna check with Tom Hines at the county. I know for a fact the town board did not intend to split that property. I suspect there was a mistake in the line in the county's boundaries, because if you look at our zoning map, the parcel boundary that is on parcel viewer doesn't match up with our zoning map for Mr. Grasso's property. But it does match up with that little piece. So if you look at our zoning map.
Based on
yeah.
my review, I believe that there was two parcels
Yeah.
in there. There's two different parcel numbers located in the deed. I believe that when he combined the properties for tax purposes, that lot never had a new zoning change.
And that may be the case. I'm gonna confirm that. I'm gonna ask our attorney to double check with real property. I'm gonna confirm with our local planning board. No subdivision has happened up there since the zoning map was created. And when we did the update of the zoning map in 2018, I think it was, when we added the EEO, we confirmed any lot line adjustments done up to that point. So, but we could simply, if we decide to move forward on this for Mr. Grasso, that little piece that is clearly owned by Wix, is shown as R5 on the map, could also be redesignated as R2.
Would it affect Mr. Wicks in any way?
No, it would just make that little tiny piece. Right now, his property has R2, except for that little piece that is R5,
Which neighbors me?
which neighbors this other property. So what it would do is, if you look at the zoning map, it actually makes the area whole. And with the extension of Beehive Road as a public roadway, I mean, currently, if you look on the parcel viewer, there is a trail path that goes into Mr. Grasso's property from the end of Beehive Road. What he's proposing, if he moves forward with the subdivision, is that would become, he would bring that up to town specs.
I like that a lot.
Yeah, and Jeff Fry has indicated that it would actually be helpful to the town because it creates a better turnaround for vehicles in the wintertime.
My question, Mike, is, and for you, Mr. Grasso, as you put this in, you will be bringing a road up to specs and then the town will take it over.
So-
Am I understanding that?
So the
correctly?
current Beehive Road, if you look on the last page in red,
Yes,
is the
yes.
current road.
Yes.
I will extend the current road through the blue part to the end of the
Yes.
parcel, which a new cul-de-sac will be admitted there.
Okay. they're
Once
gonna-
I bring that road up to specs, then Mr. Fry has agreed that it would be to the town advantage in the letter, and he would take that over,
He would,
extending Beehive Road all the way through.
Just
Yep.
clear as, I wanted to be clear
Yep.
because we are recording.
he
this.
would make a recommendation, Jeff Fry would make a recommendation to the town board to accept that roadway. Once it was confirmed, it was developed to town specifications.
There's probably a whole procedure for that. that Mary
There
has
is.
done a million
There
We
times.
is.
don't, after talking with my attorney, there's no benefit to having a private road. I gotta bring the road up to get somebody down the road anyway. And then when I spoke to Jeff, he's like, we'll just go all the way through, because now we have a place to put the snow. Yeah.
Where does that end, Beehive Road, once you've completed yours? What is
It
the
backs
next-
up to the subdivision of Catskill Farms on the Cedar Drive side.
Thank you.
Which is a fairly new subdivision that was just,
Actually, the Catskill Farms owner still owns the neighboring property to my property, probably for future development, I would imagine.
Yeah.
And to answer the 11 acres overlap, I saw your eye perfectly saw that.
We were looking, yes,
So on this overlap, you'll see it here. That is all mountainous terrain.
yes.
That is owned by the Sultan Ridge family, which they're off of Van Tine Road. They own 70+ acres, and when I spoke to the owner I bought this from, the Andrews family, they've been arguing back and forth whose it is. And I think it's literally somebody's just moving the pin back and forth because the property's been sold, the deed is literally handwritten. So me and my agreement is that we're just going to give him that property because it's useless to me and he can't build on it anyway. It's literally
Well,
a 300-400 foot
Yeah.
mountain.
a handwritten deed could also read a pile of stones by something, something.
Exactly.
Right.
Somebody's moved,
Yeah, somebody could,
right?
right, and we would not, with that area would remain in R5. We would
Correct.
only be
Selfridge
designating,
is R5, so it would stay in R5.
yeah, we would only be designating this area that he's presenting as the R2.
And also,
So,
if you see where the blue line is, that's actually a current Woods Road. If you look back at the survey, it's actually clear already, so I'm not clearing any more land for more development. I know there was a concern about environmental issues. It's already clear, so we're literally laying
Many
stone on
times-
that and paving it and let Jeff have it.
Many times people do that to bring out wood. So
Yeah.
I'm aware of that.
Aaron, you have any questions?
I don't have any questions, but I'm not as inclined as I think the rest of the board to just, I think that there's a reason why this property is designated R5. So I think, that I understand that there's R2 and the benefit of the road. It sounds like a sort of quid pro quo that if you're able to do this many lots, then you would bring the road in. But I'm not as inclined to be persuaded
Okay.
for that.
Well, I can tell you, as somebody who was on the committee going lot by lot, it's R5 because of the large size
Correct.
and the surrounding lots around it. It basically with Beehive Road ending there, that was the reasoning to make it R5. But so I did have a conversation with Mary Lou, though, because there is a proposed subdivision involved with this. It would become a coordinated review because changing a zoning designation on a property is a type 1 action. So it would become a coordinated review. So if we were to consider it, we would have to determine lead agency. In this case, clearly the subdivision is more, the planning board would have a greater authority than the town board. So if we were to consider it, which we can't really tonight anyway, because we have to get the amended application. But Mary Lou suggested that, if we were to consider it, that we would then we would have to circulate notice for lead agency, or we could just cede to the planning board lead agency if they choose to take it. Seeker would have to be done. Then it would have to come back to us for the zoning change review. Once seeker was completed, then it would go back to the planning board for subdivision. They could happen simultaneously, but there's always a sort of a buyer beware, as it were, because if the zoning change doesn't happen, then the subdivision can't happen. So, in reality, it would go seeker, town board decision, planning board decision, but the planning board and town board could happen simultaneously if Mr. Grasso chose to pursue that
I
himself.
can't put in a subdivision application because the zoning is correct for what my plans are. That's why I started with the zoning.
Right.
And is this parcel like too small for something like a conservation subdivision where the houses would be clustered together?
Very good question. So there is a off the mountainous terrain, if you want to call it, there is some vegetation type area in the back that I've thought about a conservation subdivision. I'm not really that far yet because I'm waiting for the engineer, and the engineer is not willing to get involved until we have a decision on what zoning we're going to go, because it's a lot of work for them to go survey it, resurvey it, depending on the conservation. So conservation is up for question, but not that it's too early for that, I think, based on engineers.
So you're saying that even with the conservation subdivision, you wouldn't be able to get the number of dwellings with R5?
Correct, I would not. That is correct. And again, my request was AR3 because I am going to do 3 acre or plus size lots. There's no 2 acre lots. So the R2 is just to appease the not spot zoning comment, if that makes
Right.
sense.
If we were to make it an AR3, it would be the only property there that would be 3 acres only.
Right.
Yeah.
It's also not in an ag district, so it wouldn't.
Yeah.
There's no hydric soils, there's no water. It's a really a beautiful piece of property. It's
I've
flat.
seen, I know it's beautiful.
Have you been up there?
Oh, well, I've driven to the end.
Oh, okay, good. It's flat. There is like a little nature's preserve path potentially in the back that I'm
Oh, he's here. Yeah, I did that.
Okay, board member, we are back out live. Apologies. Apparently, we had a short in an extension cord and it tripped the circuit breaker. So our apologies is resolved. So welcome Councilman Paddock. So 7:15 PM. Got it. Thank you. Adam, the bills are there if you want to catch up. They've signed them, or you can catch up later if you want, however you want to do it. So we're talking about Mark's presentation.
So back to the last page.
Yeah,
The goal would be, like I said, to bring that road up on the conservation easement. Aaron, the back, if you see that dotted line that sort of is diagonal on the back parcel, that would be where that were to start if it were to go through. That's where that conservation would probably, now you can see it wouldn't affect lot number 1, which is the closest to the red line, because it doesn't go all the way through there, but if it were to occur, that's what the line is for. Conservation. So just to think about
This
that.
one that goes down to here.
Correct. Yep.
Adam, you know you just walked in, but so Mark originally was proposing AR3 based on the fact that parcel viewer is green, whether it's R2 or AR3, and so he and Jerry Davis thought AR3 would be the best, but then after our meeting, we said that R2 would be better because of the surrounding properties. So he's going to reapply.
I'm gonna
As
amend my
R2?
application to go to from R3 to AR3 to R2, which will not look like we're spot zoning, even though my lots will still maintain at 3 acres or larger.
Gotcha.
And let's get the right parcel selected here. So we also discovered in reviewing the zoning map that the parcel next door, there's a little strip, well, not that probably is in error because the remainder of it's the parcel where the Wicks parcel where the cell tower is.
Yeah.
The entire balance of that property is R2. It may have at one time there may have been a lot line there at one time that the county picked up when we rezoned. So the suggestion would be that we would also, in the process of zoning, if we were to consider this, zoning R2 would zone that piece, so it would finish out, so you wouldn't have a little piece there that was R5.
I think another reason why that is because it is on the bottom of that mountain, so it really is that whole parcel on the Wick side is all mountainous terrain.
Yeah.
It really can't
Well,
do it anyway.
On the zoning map, it's shown as that piece shown as a piece of Mr. Grasso's property, which I believe to be an error.
Okay.
Because it's not, doesn't match up with the parcel viewer and doesn't match up with the deed. So I believe when the original zoning map was done in 2012, that line was the wrong place for some
I
reason.
remember we questioned it when we could see it on the parcel. view.
Exactly.
Because the AR3 was a pink elephant, right? It had nothing to do with anything because it was the wrong color on the maps. When we looked at it, we just had the wrong color. So it was again, our request was because we were going to do 3 acres or larger. But because everybody has 2 next to us, we don't have a problem. I don't have a problem with 2. It's just to appease the avoidance of spot.
Yeah.
Zoning, if that makes sense.
So we could have him amend his application, to Mr. Davis, amend it to us. We can then talk about it at the next meeting. Mary Lou will be here, so she can answer any legal questions you may have. If we decide we're gonna entertain the idea, seeker would have to be completed. We would have to have a public hearing on this zoning map change. We would have to refer it to the county planning board for the zoning map change. Then seeker would have to be completed before we could make a determination or a decision. And then, but that does involve the planning board because Mary Lou's opinion was that since he is presenting that the intent of the reason to ask for this is to do a subdivision, that it has to be considered as one action,
Right, and you don't want to, what's that called?
segmentation.
Segmentation.
Yeah. If it were an unlisted action, it could be an uncoordinated review and we could each do our own seeker. But because a zoning map change is a type 1 action, by law, it is must be a coordinated review. So it can't be two independent seekers. So they have to be reviewed at the same time. And Adam, I was saying that clearly the subdivision review is more significant than the zoning change.
designation, yeah.
Although the zoning change, if they can't do the subdivision without the zoning change, but I think in this case, it would make more sense that the planning board was the lead agency on seeker.
There you go.
And so I guess what the next steps are, you
My
should,
question before we get to that
Yeah.
is, I applied in April 14th of this year. It's been on the agenda a couple of times. It got moved due to time constraints
Mhm.
because of where it ended up.
Mhm.
Is there a possibility, because we have a quorum, we can at least make a decision if we're going to recognize it or not? Is waiting another.
we can't do that until we have all the public hearings and all that.
No, even acknowledge that we're even going to listen to the idea.
Oh,
Because my question is
Well, that-
we've done a lot
okay.
of work and time, and I
Fair
don't
enough.
want to wait another meeting and then it not. go-
Understood.
And then we're not even going to acknowledge it. So
understood.
that's
So if we decide we don't want to do this and don't move it forward, then he's absolutely correct. There's no
Right.
point in starting the process.
Totally,
So
yeah,
fine, which would be 3 months.
we could take make a resolution of whether we were going to entertain the application, provided he amends it as he has presented tonight. So, so I'm prepared to make a resolution that we consider the request based on pending a change of the permit from AR3 to R2. So I'll make that motion.
We would say then we're entertaining.
So we're entertaining the idea. When he makes the change, then when Mary Lou's here, then we decide whether we're going to initiate the application. We would then need a full EAF, which you may have already
I've already done
submitted.
that as
Yeah, I
well.
believe you already submitted that. So,
And the payment and the fee for that.
and then we would then move forward with the seeker process. But he's just asking,
I guess if we're not going to recognize it, then we're.
because if we
I
don't,
wanna
if we
waste
don't,
your
if we don't decide we don't want to consider this, then it, well, let me see, before we get too far into talking about it, do I have a second for the motion? Because we're discussing without a second, so,
I'll second.
okay. So the question would be is, the resolution tonight is just to say, you should amend your application. The board will discuss it next week, at next week's meeting with our attorney. We will determine next steps, and then we will move it forward for consideration. We can't do anything with any decisions. We can't do referrals or anything until we decide what we're gonna do about seeker.
That's what I was
Yeah.
gonna say. Should we be doing the seeker or because you just said there shouldn't be two seekers? Would we leave that?
No, we wouldn't be doing the seeker. So what we would do as the first agency to get the application, in this case, we are the first agency. So we would decide if we wanted to submit intent to seek lead agency. I would propose that we circulate the seeker and say, we believe the town of Rochester Planning Board should be lead agency. Then they get to say yes or no, they want to be lead agency. If they say no, then we do become lead agency. If they say yes, then they become lead agency. Those are the only two agencies that would be involved because we are the only two that a permit would be necessary from.
and this, the resolution that you guys. just
So the
support
resolution is just
to
to,
say that the board. is
he
going
should
to-
submit a new application and we'll
Consider-
consider it next
Right.
week with our attorney.
Right,
That's all
so
we're,
there's no other decision being made.
no. But it, as he said, if the four of us said, or if three of us don't say yes, then it dies. And the difference with as Mary Lou has often said, with the town board versus the planning board is the planning board is a review agency. The town board is a legislative. So anybody can make a request to us at any time. We can deny it without any reasoning behind it. But I think, my opinion is it's worthwhile to at least have more conversation about. So that's why I'm making that resolution and be seconded. So all it's doing right now is saying he's going to submit an amended application. We'll talk with Mary Lou next week to get the process straightened out. We would then do a resolution to seek lead agency, or in our case, we'd be circulating a notice of no intent to seek lead agency, but just saying we've received this application. We believe the Town of Rochester Planning Board is better served to do the seeker. We would send it to them. They would say yes or no. And then they would either become lead agency, or if they chose not to, then it would fall back to us, because we are the only two choices. There is no other agency involved.
Do you need me here next week for that meeting, or is that something you want me to present?
What's the board think? Do you think there's anything Mr. Grasso can bring on next Thursday? If not, we have his packet. Do you have another one you can leave for us
I
for
do.
Chris?
I do.
I tell you what, if you
I'll
put
leave
it
it
on
right
top
on
of that blue folder, it'll go in this folder. Perfect. Does that sound?
I mean, we should probably vote.
Yeah, I'm just making sure everybody understands. it
I
first.
understand.
Okay, so you want to roll call vote?
Councilwoman Anowen,
No.
Councilwoman Haugen Depew,
Never happens. Yes, consider it. Yes.
Councilman Hewitt, not here, Councilman Paddock,
Aye.
and Supervisor Baby.
Aye.
Okay.
Okay, so if you would do the amendment
I will.
with Jerry. And then he has presented this packet to us already. Do you feel the need for him to amend this application to us, also changing it to R2? Or does this letter that's dated?
I was hoping that the letter I wrote today to submit is formal enough for the application for Jerry, but I will take the lead sheet on that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Send
Yeah,
it.
you'll
I
have
think
to,
that's all Mary Lou was saying.
yeah, you'll just have to officially amend this
Yeah.
because you have submitted it and signed it.
Understood.
So we can't change it without you. Probably Jerry will just have you change and
Cross it out,
initial it.
and send it back.
Exactly.
Right.
But it's got to start with him.
Understand. It'll be on
Um,
his desk tomorrow morning.
And you did submit the other packet to us already.
Correct. The original packet with the long form.
Right.
So do you want me here next week?
I don't believe we need, unless anybody else has other things, other questions may come up. I don't believe so.
Okay.
So,
Thank you for your time.
thank you.
All righty, Mr. Grasso.
Okay. Next. We have the short-term rental. So let me just get up on the screen here. We talked a lot last week. I put up changes. I asked everybody to take a quick look at it,
Yeah.
see what other changes you may or may not want to make. I apologize, I didn't bring paper copies, and so sharing it is going to be difficult now that we're all back in person.
It's the trouble of being in person
I
rather
know,
than Zoom. I rely
that's
on you,
true.
Mike.
I know.
'Cause I don't have the version that you edited
I can email that to you.
meeting, and then we can look, then B and I can look at my computer
Yeah.
together if that.
Adam, if you wanted to, you could bring your chair over here and look at my computer, and the two of you can look at that computer, and that will work for us.
Yeah.
Or if you want to grab one of the white chairs, whatever you want to do. Just move my bag and stuff. Yeah,
Backstage.
yeah.
Oh, yeah. you
Major
missed-
trip hazard
Yeah.
though.
Trip hazard and.
That's all right. I'm well insured.
Yeah, I'll bet you are. Oh, golly.
Oh, I don't have it on that computer. I'm gonna have to share it on this computer.
Finally filled out my notebook. Yeah. I gotta get something like that.
Time for- Listen, they get it.
Listen,
This has gotten like
I just
kind of,
this is, I don't know what number this.
This is
one
odd.
That's it.
I can't
Still
even tell you.
sharing.
I have a stack of notebooks. The problem is my handwriting is so bad, I don't know what most of them say.
my problem is I don't take the right
Yeah.
notes.
Yeah.
Look, that scribble.
You have vice handwriting though.
And,
My
I just
my
get
grandmother had the most unbelievable cursive
big.
to the
No,
day
this is
she.
my scribble for
Hmm.
tonight. I mean, you can read some of it.
Yeah.
When I'm really engaged in the conversation, I'm trying to take notes. I'll go back and look and I'll have written down.
I'm
like,
not sure if our Zoom shut
and-
down.
And like, I'm like,
Missed the important
What-
words,
what was-
the transitional words.
Yeah, I believe our Zoom shut down with all that.
oh, so we're not streaming any?
I don't know.
I
The
thought
computer
I
said
heard
we
it
were,
say-
but
I thought I heard it say we were back in.
it did, but
I heard it saying it was recording.
yeah,
Yes.
but it apparently is not communicating. So we'll get back
I
out
have
there.
my phone.
That's an old
That's an
meeting.
old one.
Did it just lock up?
Um,
Says it's still broadcasting.
Yeah, we're there. We're still broadcasting.
What if it's broadcasting from it? Yeah, I see it here. I wonder where it's broadcasting from.
That's-
In about 5 minutes, I'll see you wave.
There you go.
no, it's not
Just
that one,
says
that's
start
my
new
phone.
meeting. I don't want to start a new meeting.
Let's look up on top. Do you have two browsers or two open? It was my move.
Yeah, but it's not telling me anything. That's saying post attend, they're saying post attendee.
There he goes.
Oh, there we
There
go.
you
There
wave.
was your wave.
That was the time to.
That's so weird.
I like when we're
It may
talking
have,
and it freezes on the silly face.
you know what? It must be broadcasting from this computer.
Oh, see.
I think if you don't stop the stream, it just keeps going.
Yeah, no, I know it
So if
does,
you
but
click on the meeting link from that.
I tried that and
Oh.
and it said join here and I clicked join. It says you're already in the meeting. Do you want to continue? But I can't find where on my computer I'm on the meeting.
Are
right
you
there I
logged
am.
in under the same account on both computers?
Yeah, I am. But it shouldn't matter. It won't let me stop sharing. Oh, there it
There
did.
we go.
It finally cleared out. Okay, we're back. Whatever I just did it right.
Do you have one for picture and one for the sound? Is that what it is? I have that at work.
Oh,
Like
No,
where
this,
my-
no,
This is the sharing.
this is my sharing
screen.
screen and that's my
That's
Zoom.
the
screen. Yeah.
like control panel.
Okay.
Anyway, we're good again now. Whatever it did, it fixed itself.
And we were streaming the whole time. And we still
Yeah.
are.
We still are.
And we tried to, even when the repair was taking
Yep.
place.
Okay, so let me get that file up here. Because unfortunately, I don't appear to have it on this computer. I don't have it on this computer.
We all got cross offs and arrows and lines.
Yeah.
and our-
Scribbles. Missing a highlighter.
used to carry them. See, 2 years ago.
Sorry about being late. And I almost got caught in that parade. I would have really been late.
Oh,
If I was
yeah.
the caboose in that parade, in the graduation parade.
But they're happy. It's a great thing.
All the 209s aligned with people right now.
That's.
I thought I was in the
That's
parade.
great.
I was waving.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's very nice.
Maddie had her moving up parade today, where they go to the school and they get their 8th grade diploma right in the car.
Okay, here it is. Now we just got to share screen.
Are you gonna email it to me too, Mike, or should I join this Zoom meeting?
Oh, I'll email it to you.
On my desktop, that doesn't do
Yeah, I was
that.
gonna say, I thought I emailed
I
it
have-
to everybody,
Oh,
but
you, the one after our meeting?
yeah, but you know what? That's okay. I'll send it to you.
Let me look. Did you need- I didn't see it.
Desktop's getting full, it's time to post this stuff off.
I'll send it to you, Aaron.
Okay, yeah, I don't see it.
It's just, this computer is just not happy. I'm trying to, telling it to do too many things at one time, and it's like, no.
Did you watch this yesterday? This.
Let me email it because it's open. Sometimes. Okay, Aaron, it's on its way to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can't spell it. I can't spell it.
Boy, Zoom was a lot easier when we weren't in the same room.
It's true. That's why we were not doing these meetings where we're broadcasting. Okay,
Here we go.
I haven't
And we're
gone
share-
yet, but we can get started.
Yep, and we're sharing screen. There it is.
Yep.
Take a second to pop up, so. Didn't come yet?
No, but it usually just takes a couple minutes.
Okay.
There we go.
Got it?
Yep.
Okay. So we kind of went through a lot of this before, but what I'd like to do is just walk through it again and have a conversation about any other changes. So in the purpose, we just clarify that the use of short-term rentals as home businesses. And I think, actually, Aaron and I had a chance to, we went to that online training last night. Were you on it too, B?
For a
Did you?
little while,
Okay.
yes.
And a lot of what was discussed was that essentially these businesses, to some degree, it's the use of a home in a residential setting, but it is somewhat the same as a home business. So that's why I'm adding this to just clarify that it's still a residential use, but it's becoming more like a bed and breakfast or an inn. So that's why I added that in there to help sort of present that. The rest, I didn't see any changes. Do you see anything as we work our way down that you would want to change? The zoning, it's an accessory use, so it means it's an allowed use in those zoning districts that we're saying AR3, AB3, R1, R2, R5, H, and B. And it's accessory to a residential use, single family and two-family dwelling unit. The density, if it's new construction, it would need to meet the density and setbacks for the zoning district. If it's a pre-existing non-conforming structure, obviously it falls under pre-existing non-conforming and would not need to meet density. Prohibitions, This was from the county that it can't be in a multifamily dwelling unit. We also said it cannot be used for commercial or on parcels that are used for commercial or industrial purposes. And vacant property which doesn't already have a residential dwelling, because you can't be an accessory use to a main use if the main use doesn't exist previously. So we say that anybody who wants to do that on a vacant should apply for the campground use. And we did also have a dialogue about, and Mr. Davis recommended that we consider doing a smaller type of campground. That would be a standalone local law that we would adopt, and it's something we would have to have further discussion on. So at the moment, it would not, anybody who wanted to do it on vacant land would have to apply as a campground.
Right.
Oops, sorry, I went too far. Added the definition of access, which is already used in the zoning code. Accessory dwelling unit. Just defining what that really is. It's a secondary residential dwelling unit. It shares the building lot or larger primary home, including having separate cooking and sanitary facilities. So if it's a shared cooking or sanitary facility, it's not an accessory dwelling, then it's a part of the original dwelling.
Right. So I know why you put this definition in there. But it's currently, we don't mention accessory dwelling units anywhere in the STR law.
So I'm only mentioning it because we talk about being an accessory use. I understand what you're saying, and they always say, don't define something that you don't use in the code.
Right.
Maybe we need to put it in the code somewhere.
Or we, at some future date, will be putting,
Yeah.
so.
I mean, putting a definition in that isn't used in the code is not awful if we may be adding something later.
Right.
But we probably could also amend a section, because I think what we're trying to say by this is useful in other places. We just have to find the right section to include that in.
Right, yeah, because I think.
And maybe that goes back to Aaron, back to the zoning shall be, no, it wouldn't be in the zoning, because the zoning could be, it could be in the existing single family. It's not an accessory.
Is it bad to define something though? Even though I know you're saying it's not in law. it shouldn't
Well,
be
if it's not in the
defined, but-
law, there's no need for the definition.
So the accessory dwelling units have a very specific meaning, and right now, we don't have them in our code. So so I think this maybe is like a pin.
Yeah. And I will tell you, the zoning review committee has, we haven't gotten their proposal yet. It's still being formulated, but one of their sections that, and the county backs this, is having accessory dwelling units of being allowed. It's similar to the old days. In our old zoning code, we had, they were called mother-daughter units, or there was another term for it.
It was a unit for family or
Mother-in-law
something.
quarters. sometimes they're
Yeah,
called.
yeah. And what these are is a secondary structure on a property. The county encourages the use of them because it then alleviates housing needs. For a while, they were promoting not to include them, because what would happen oftentimes is it would be occupied by a family member. They would either move or as they aged, possibly go into an assisted living facility. And then it would become just a flat out rental of an apartment. And that sometimes the density, because usually there was no density imposed on these. The county is now recommending that these are a good thing. Marbletown adopted a law recently. A couple other towns have adopted laws, and the county is recommending it highly. So it's something that down the road we probably will add, or possibly we'll at least have discussion on it, put it that way.
And then we'd have to.
So
decide.
adding it in there now is not necessarily a bad thing. But I think also we could probably utilize that term somewhere in the existing code that were, or the proposed code.
Right, I
to
think
clarify.
the thing that it's confusing as we get down further is we talk about people that have multiple dwellings on a single property.
Mhm.
But those, according to this definition, could be called accessory dwelling units, but they probably won't be in the future because they probably meet the density requirements for the number of dwellings for those.
Yeah, I mean, the standard, the way this definition is written is any dwelling, any
Right.
secondary dwelling unit on a property would be an accessory dwelling
Right.
unit. It's not the
So
main.
if we did adopt an accessory dwelling.
We might
unit,
have to
we would have
amend
to
this
amend this.
definition.
That's, yeah,
Okay. I mean, I'm not opposed to taking it out if you think we shouldn't have it. I want to leave it there for the moment, but.
Yeah.
So we also are saying an existing short-term transient rental is one that as defined within this code that's in operation as of December 31, 2021, and meets all the criteria of 140.26 OP and Q. But I think we have to go back and to figure out if the OP and Q is correct. Then we did add non-primary residence, a property in the town of Rochester, which is not a person's primary domicile and is located on a different parcel than their primary residence. I put that in there as a placeholder because we at one time were talking primary, non-primary, but do you feel we've kind of moved away from that and probably don't need a definition of it anymore? Yeah. I'm gonna go ahead and delete that definition for now then. We can always reinsert it. Primary residence. Oh, you know why we did need it? I think we do say further down that they can have two, a primary and a non-primary. And if we take that out, then we wouldn't need this, but so a rental is an agreement granting use or possession of a residence in whole or part to a person or group in exchange for consideration valued in money, goods, labor, credits, or other valuable consideration. That's the standard textbook definition of a rental unit. And since we're defining short-term rentals, I realized we didn't define the word rental. So I went out and found that definition of rental, and I think it's important to have in there. Now, the rented in part is an interesting thing, and Aaron and I were talking about this yesterday. This is where somebody lives in the house and they're going to rent out like a single bedroom, and they're probably going to be there when the people are there. It's almost more like the traditional bed and breakfast. We don't differentiate in any way. To me, they're kind of almost two very different uses. I left the definition in there in case we wanted to revisit the idea of maybe having a different set of standards for the ones where it's only a bedroom or two bedrooms that somebody's renting out while the owner is still present during the stay.
right.
They would still need the health and safety aspects, but it's there's a little more, it's a little more managed. Clearly, the wild parties that some people talk about are not going to happen if the owner's present. So
I agree with, I was thinking about that today too, is like, so this was in the training, this was mentioned in some cities and towns have done this, where the rented in part is 2 guests or less. So it's not, we're not talking about a lot of guests, it's 2 guests or less. And then they, like I was thinking exactly along those lines, Mike, is that they would get the fire and safety inspection, but might not have to do some of the other permitting requirements, and that we also.
we can
would not-
waive some of the other permitting requirements, because if the person is still living there, it truly is still their home. They're still, and they're just renting out a couple of rooms occasionally. One person reached out to me that this is exactly what they do, and you know, she said to me, I always know when somebody's getting married because I end up with, you know, people going to weddings who want to stay there or graduation parties or, but she never rents out without herself being present. She never does a rental of the house, so.
And I think also that would, like we talked about, you know, we could, if we're going to do a cap, that type of rental wouldn't count towards that.
So it-
Now, I know that that's the way Airbnb kind of started, was rent the room in your
Yeah.
house for $50 and this and that. Is it still popular today? Because when I take a look at the Airbnb site, I see almost exclusively houses.
it's not that popular, but there are some people doing it. And the point that I think Aaron is trying to make and that I popped in my head is that it's a small number, but it's a different impact.
It is, but how do we differentiate between the two?
Well, we
What-
say the person,
What's stop,
On the application,
well, what's stopping me from saying, you know, hey, there's no more permits yet. I'll just stay there and rent it out and then not. You know,
Right.
we're not.
I mean,
gonna
that's
police this
always,
or
yeah,
enforce this.
I mean, that's always,
Mhm.
no matter what we do, if we're any form of differentiation we do.
Right.
There's always gonna be that,
Yeah.
you know,
Mhm.
and we're not, you know, this is zoning violations, it's, you know,
And if there's a complaint and we investigate and we find that there's a problem, then we.
we're still
issue it.
requiring that we know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And the person is signing, the application is essentially an affidavit. It is, if they, you know, apply for different than they're actually doing, it is fraud.
Okay.
So, I mean, they're,
right, I mean, we have that, and anytime anyone comes into the building
yeah,
office,
Mhm.
they're asked, what are you doing?
Right.
And, you know, and I think, so the application, another thing that I saw in that training is, I think it was San Francisco, or maybe it was Boulder. They have like type A, type B, and
Right.
type C. And you are checking in that application
Check
which
the
one you are.
box,
And then that sort of, then you go through it, then there's an inspection. You know, I've been in the rentals where the owner will stay and they look different,
Yeah,
you know, they do look different. It looks like somebody was living there as opposed to a
Right.
very clean, like, so.
I mean, I'm open to presenting it and see where we think it goes. I mean, we could relax some of the application fees, not fees, the application process for it.
Right.
I would still say it should be the same fee because the inspection is still
Right.
happening. So, but it certainly accounts for. We could consider it a separate, a lesser fee as well.
Yeah, I think it's just like, I mean, we haven't, maybe we haven't had this discussion yet, maybe we have, but it's like, what are the different types of short-term transient rentals? Do we want all of them in our town? And if so, do we want some of them to be a little bit more limited than others because of their impact? And then those are what when we're imposing a fee, we encourage the ones that we think have the
Right.
lesser impact through
Well,
a,
in these, I would propose that these don't, the cap never applies to these because it's the person's living there, it's their residence, they're not taking away from affordable housing. It's already occupied by somebody, they're just, in a way, they're bringing in tourists and there's
Like a
no,
tourist house.
there's no
as
downside
opposed
to
a
it. Yeah, it's almost like the old style boarding house.
boarding house.
but I have spoken to several residents who are doing this.
Mhm.
And this is how they help pay for their homes, so it's just, I think it's kind of a question for the board. Do we think that this is, you know, different enough that we want to treat it differently, or do we want to not treat that differently? And if so, then we leave that definition in there, and if not, then we,
but a resident would only be allowed to have one of these. They
Right.
wouldn't be able to have multiples. or-
No, you can't have
Can't
multiple.
live in it. Yeah, split
Okay,
yourself.
and again, my.
So we're saying an STR in a primary residence, and
Mhm.
in this case, we would leave in the definition of primary residence. And they would have to show, this is where I live. This is, and.
Yeah, that makes
and-
sense.
Yeah,
All right.
and if it's no, there's, you know, it's gotta be the same structure.
Yeah.
I don't think we differentiate that anywhere, seems.
We can though, in rented apartment,
That's what I'm saying.
an STR in a primary residence that's being occupied in part by the owner or in part by the owner and in part by, so what I'm gonna add is 2 or less STR guests simultaneously. Because they might have a single bedroom that 2 people are staying there, or they may have 2 bedrooms that 1 person's staying in each bedroom.
Okay.
But if we say 2 or less guests and the owner is living there simultaneously,
If you want to have 6 guests, well, then this doesn't apply to you.
so why don't we add the word structure, an STR in a primary residence, or actually dwelling unit, because that's what we're using, primary residence dwelling as defined above, that is being occupied in part by the owner and in part by 2 or less STR guests simultaneously.
There you go.
Okay. And then the rented in whole, I don't think we need that definition because that's everything else. Or should we add a definition for rented in whole and say,
We do have
Yeah.
down below, we talk about, where is it? There's you can have 1 where you live there and 1, yeah.
But you have to come.
which section is it?
So H3. We have no owner entity may hold permits for greater than 2 properties at any given time. 1 primary residence STR and 1 non-primary residence STR.
Right.
So I guess, yeah.
But we also say multiple permits on the same property shall count as 1 for the purpose of this section of the code. So,
Right.
so if you have 1 parcel and you have your main house and you have a cabin or 2 cabins on it, you need separate permits for each one you're gonna rent as an STR, but we're only gonna count it as 1 unit because it's 1 parcel.
You're measuring it by the parcel, not by the.
Well, in this
or the
case,
space.
In this case, because we're trying to limit it so somebody doesn't come in and buy up 5 properties and
I
turn them all into STRs.
So for primary residence, should we make it clear that we're talking about a parcel
As opposed to
As
a building.
as opposed to a dwelling unit?
dwelling,
Yeah, we probably should.
as in cabin.
But then in the rented in part, we make it clear
Yep.
that
So
it's-
primary, a person's domicile, where they usually live, whether on a full or part-time, it's typically a house including any habitable accessory structures on the same property. So we do say
Oh,
it.
you do.
We do say it.
And then do we need to define non-primary residence? Then,
No, I don't think
Okay.
so.
all right,
Um,
then I'm good.
yeah, and I don't think we need to. I'll leave the rented in whole if I'll see if I can, there was a rented in whole definition in the Gardner law, which basically talks about that the person is renting the entire building.
Is that not what happens when guests come in and the homeowner's not there?
Right,
Yeah.
Right, that's your rented in home.
yeah.
And
So
what-
so why don't we say an STR in a dwelling unit that is being occupied
Only by guests.
only by guests?
For
Only
the
by
period
guests.
of the rental.
Yeah, yep.
Only by guests.
Because we're, in this version, we're not differentiating between that type of rental. Whether someone's doing it part of the year or full-time year. So.
Being occupied entirely
By guests.
by STR guests for the rental period or duration.
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 Okay. I mean, we can tweak it slightly, but that's, okay. Then the STR, the short-term transit rental, the use of a parcel for the rental or lease of any or part of any residential use, single and family and 2-family dwelling unit I'm just being clear, single family or two family for a period of 30 days or less to one entity. Motels, hotels, resorts, inns, and bed and breakfasts are excluded from this definition. So if somebody rents at them, maybe we should say those as defined in this code, because we define all those in the code. Will this say this chapter? Okay. Short-term transient rental unit, a dwelling unit utilized for the purpose of short-term transient rentals. Pretty straightforward. Sleeping room, that's based on New York State. It's an interior room other than a bedroom. Because we all know that in these short-term rentals, the areas are made into sleeping rooms that are not traditionally bedrooms. So this is just saying that it has to still meet the fire code. Vacant property, a parcel which does not contain a residential dwelling unit. Then we say anybody who rents, who does, has to get a permit. All short-term transit rentals shall obtain a valid permit from the code enforcement officer before operation. Just clarifying, the permit shall be applicable for a 2-year period, subject to annual fire and safety inspection. So the permit's good for 2 years, but you got to get a fire and safety inspection yearly. That's New York State law. Ownership of properties, I think we beat that to
Yeah,
death.
I was about to say the
Yeah.
same thing.
And then number 2 is what we added at the last meeting. So must disclose names of all partners and their members when applying. Any changes shall be provided to the code enforcement department within 30 days of change. That was Chris's language of to solve that problem. Now, do we still want to leave number 3? So we say you can hold permits for nobody can hold permits for greater than 2 properties at any given time. 1 primary and 1 non-primary residence. Do we want to take out the primary and non-primary and just say 2? I mean, in essence,
What if you, so you're saying that if
So,
somebody doesn't live in either.
somebody
one, they
doesn't
can
live
have-
in either one, they can still have 2.
I guess, you know,
I
again,
think-
it's 2, no matter if they're living in it or they're not living in it. It's
Right.
Still,
That's kind of where I'm headed is you can still have 2 but when you get to 3 and 4, now you're running, an accommodation chain. That's just my opinion. The 2, whether we say primary and non-primary, doesn't matter unless, in this way, it makes it easier for enforcement of trying to decide what is somebody's primary residence.
yeah.
I think we're still in that circle of how do you define that? And I think you saw, I asked that question last night and the lawyer that was teaching it danced around it. He didn't really answer it.
Let's keep it simpler then. You know, again, we don't accomplish anything by putting it in there other than.
Giving a definition. to
Yeah.
it.
Well, yeah, I think the only thing that's accomplished is, I think it was the people that live here and also own multiple properties, but I think that was the
Yeah.
reasoning.
But somebody could, you know, theoretically come in, you know, from someplace else, buy 2 properties and simply rent them out without living anywhere in the area.
Or they could live here, not rent out their primary domicile and have 2 properties.
Yeah.
So they could still be,
Yeah, and I think that makes it a little more, it sort of addresses what the county said about the county really wants all non-primaries not allowed, other than existing. And I just think that that's going to be crazy to try to enforce.
Does it, I'm just gonna ask this because I'm not sure how it works at the county level. Do they put anywhere on your taxation or on your parcel, anything that says primary or not?
No. This is just the county planning board
I know.
required
so what the
modification.
required modification was, and their language was slightly different. It was owner occupied. So what their recommendation.
Oh,
is
that's
is
right,
that
owner
the
occupied.
Short-term transient rental only applies to owner occupied properties. If it's a non-owner occupied property, meaning a property that is simply used as a short-term rental or a rental for short-term basis, that is not, like, this law does not cover those. So we would either outlaw them or, encourage that to be some other definition. But they were saying their required modification was that we say non-owner occupied are not allowed. And so that's still something that we.
But they were saying existing ones, non-owner occupied would be grandfathered in.
Right, yeah, there's not a lot. we
Right,
can-
and their recommendation was the cap be set at whatever the existing number of non-owner occupied is, and that we allow as many owner occupied as want to do it, but the non-owner occupied that we set a cap, that
So
would never,
We'd never get more than
we'd
that.
never get more than, so if anybody dropped out, somebody else could fill the slot, but we would never exceed that.
Gotcha.
I just think it's difficult to police that.
Yeah.
So, either way, we just have to do
Yeah.
a require,
I mean, I think
we have to
that-
do
yeah.
a super majority to, we need 4 votes to override them if we choose to.
And for me, it's not simply about the enforcement, it's also like, do we think that type of use of residential properties is something that benefits the community and that we would like to see? And I think I know that we heard from a lot of people that
Yeah.
feel that way.
That it benefits them.
Yes.
Yes, that it benefits them.
Okay. So you're okay with the way we just changed it by saying you can have 2 properties?
So we're saying you can have 2, no matter what, total, whether it's
Owner occupied.
whether you're in part or the one, what we just defined, the
The renter, the renter in part.
that's also a prime.
Yeah, because that's a primary residence.
So-
So it's still a primary residence.
It would be regardless of what type you're doing.
Right,
You can only have 2,
yeah,
but there's still gonna be a cap.
yeah, but the cap is gonna be, that's coming up. The cap is gonna be on new after we get the grandfather one set, so. So the cap will exist, but the cap will be flexible that the board can establish it each year based on what the realistic situation is, because the housing need of the community is gonna fluctuate. So rather than putting a hard and fast cap or a hard and fast percentage, I want town boards of the future to be able to say, look, we really, really need housing right now. We're gonna lower our cap. But one thing we didn't address and we need to clarify is that once you get the permit, you continue to get it as long as you pass your safety inspection. It's not like a lottery where you're gonna, because that's not fair. If somebody has invested in this and done it for 3 or 4 years, and then suddenly they come back for the renewal, we can't say, no, you can't get your renewal now.
Can we add that to the definition too, all short-term?
There's a-
property owners?
It'll be somewhere down coming up where we want to
I
just
didn't know if we put
clarify.
an A or a
Yeah.
B right there.
Yeah. Well, there's a section coming up where it's talking about the permit,
Yeah.
and that's where it's appropriate to
Okay.
say this is that.
Yeah, I think my only fear, and is given that there will be a cap, if we're saying that people can just have 2, is it first come, first served basis? Are we somehow going to be encouraging people that are just, can afford to buy 2 properties and rent them out as short-term rentals? Those are the types of things that we were trying to prevent by saying you could only do 1 non-primary residence short-term
Yeah.
rental per
Well,
person.
do we want to go back to that? I mean, we define primary residence pretty well.
But again, we have a grandfathered cap.
No,
right?
the cap is not grandfathered. The grandfathering is anybody who's doing
Yeah.
it currently will get it. Then the cap is established after the grandfathering
Right.
period so the cap is on new.
But if owner occupied, we have an unlimited amount.
No, what I was just saying is that,
Oh,
If we-
but I see where Adam is headed. If it's owner occupied, we shouldn't put a cap on those.
So
The cap should only
In
be on non-owner occupied, and now we're back to the same circle.
wait,
See, what Adam's saying is, if we grandfather in the existing ones, and then we set a cap on new applications,
right,
if somebody owns a property and lives there and then decides down the road, I want to do short-term rentals, they would be subject to the cap.
Yes.
And I'm not sure, I think what Adam's point is if somebody is living in their house and they're not taking it away, at least what I'm hearing is they're not taking it
Yeah.
away from a housing stock. So if they're subject to the cap, then we kind of have defeated the purpose of allowing people to utilize their homes in a way to help pay their bills.
so, yeah, you're talking about just the owner occupied, so whether they are there.
Right, which is back to what the county recommended.
So, because that's what a
And,
lot
yeah.
of towns, so what I've seen is a lot, the way some towns have done this. Relationship between limiting the number of permits per person and having a cap. Is they've said you can only have one non-primary residence STR. And then they've said that the board can set a cap through resolution.
Right,
So like, that's another,
but the cap, we could say that the cap is only on non-primary residences. But then we're back to the same original discussion where what started all this idea
Right.
was what's a primary residence and what's not. And I mean, we define it here, but
Isn't there a pretty cut and dry difference between primary residence and owner occupied? You know, again, it doesn't matter if this is my, full-time residence, but if I live there, then I'm owner occupied.
we gotta,
yeah,
Yeah.
so in the training we did last night, they had like 6 months.
yeah,
And that's your rental duration, like you can only, for that one, you can only rent it for 6 months or
We
less.
had that in the language at one point, that there was a owner occupied was a maximum rental of 180 days.
Right.
the problem is the enforcement of that.
Mhm.
Who's gonna know when they came and when they're
Well,
going,
the-
the reality.
We don't really have the capability of enforcing that.
Mhm.
We don't, but the thing is that if it's in the law and there's an issue, then we have
Yeah,
the capability to, regulate for the health, safety and welfare of that, I think that's.
except when we're issuing a new permit. It's non-existing, so then, so if we say you can only run 6 months out of the year or occupy, 180 days, let's say, that's essentially 6 months. You can only do this 180 days a year. Who's gonna be proofing it to count those days? And I understand the law is there, but what are we gonna require as proof?
So.
And who's gonna review it? See,
I-
that's our problem, is we don't have a lot of,
A short-term transient rental committee.
Yeah, oh, no.
well, there were, in the examples shown last night, there were some that had a short-term transient rental committee that reviewed these and then made a recommendation.
I don't know because I don't own one, but I would assume that if you own a short-term transient rental through any of these companies, that at the end of the year, you probably get a 1099 that says how much money you brought in, and wouldn't it be broken down by the day?
I don't know by the day, but if you knew what they were charging per day, you could divide it back.
Yeah,
I would think that they would have to have an inventory of days rented at price.
The
It wouldn't be
problem-
one lump sum.
the problem is, we already know that Airbnb will not share data
But this is IRS information. If I have to pay taxes on the things I sell on eBay, I'm sure the people that run Airbnb have to pay an income tax on that.
Yeah,
Goes
so-
into the county, correct, now?
I wouldn't know, but my question is I don't think you would just submit one lump sum like I made $5,000 doing Airbnb this year. I think you would have to show, hey, these are the dates I rented at the cost I rented.
I don't know. I don't think so.
No, which Chris was. you can
Yeah.
tell us.
I mean, I think the.
I don't want to overcomplicate it.
I don't want to
That's-
overcomplicate it either. I think also, I wonder if we're overcomplicating it, like. I'm just looking at Marble Town's
That's the one I have
application,
also.
and they just have people check. Is it owner occupied? Is it non-owner occupied? And and then they.
But how
have
do
a
they
whole-
define owner occupied and non-owner occupied?
Well,
They
I'm
have to
looking
have
at
a
their-
definition.
They do. I'm looking at their
Oh.
application.
Okay.
Because I was trying to see like, what are they asking for people to provide? And,
Because everybody who talked to us who has a second home says that's owner occupied. And the question is, there's a difference between owner occupied and primary residence.
so there, let's see.
Yeah.
But the question is, if you're there a month out of the year and you rented 11 months, is that owner occupied? That's where Aaron is saying Los Angeles said you got to be there 6 months for it to be classified as owner
Yeah.
occupied.
They say 180 days for the, that's
Marbletown
what
does?
Marbletown and Woodstock is 100. Oh,
They label.
oh,
weekends
that's their
too.
non-owner occupied. Oh, they don't allow full.
Yeah, Woodstock does not allow non-owner occupied at all, I believe.
They do, but you still can only rent it for half the year.
Yeah, I mean, this is where, we heard public comments that our law was so onerous, and I think our law is a lot more relaxed than some of these other towns. So. I think Gardner does not allow it at all in non-owner occupied.
Right, well, that's what we, in that training, a lot of cities and towns don't either. So I think we're trying to allow it, but with knowing that has a bigger impact. Only in the sense that like, it can really change the character of a neighborhood, and we don't want to have,
So should we define owner occupied as saying a dwelling unit that the owner of the property is in residence minimum of 180 days a year?
You can say it, but can we enforce it?
Well, in the application process, so then we say you're allowed 2 units, instead of saying you're allowed a primary and a non-primary, we say you're allowed one owner occupied and one non-owner occupied, because that would then cover the second homes, the things like that. 180 days does not seem to me excessive. Some people would say it probably is. Some people would probably say 120 days, 4 months out of the year, but I think if it's your,
So my only question is, if it's a non-owner occupied and the maximum they can have is 180 days, it just sits there dormant for 180 days? Just to
no, we're saying,
owner
Oh.
oh,
occupied?
that's the other law. We're saying
Mhm.
something different. We're saying,
no, we're saying you're allowed 2 units.
Right,
An owner occupied and a non-owner occupied.
right.
The owner occupied, you have to live there 180 days a year. The
Okay,
other one, you can rent out 365.
Okay. So I think,
but we're saying, but then what we were saying before, the point you were making, is then our cap would apply to non-owner.
right,
And so that's where we would get in, like, that's the,
so to use the A, B, C, D, and that,
Right.
A is owner occupied, which can have unlimited. And then B is owner non-occupied, which has a cap, then C is grandfathered, then D is not allowed. And those would be the 4 categories that you would apply for. Now, you could apply for A and B, owner occupied and owner non-occupied. You could apply for C and only C, or you would fall into category D.
You couldn't apply for A and B. Oh, A and B with 2
Yeah.
separate units.
Yep.
Yeah.
You can
Separate
apply
units,
for
right.
A or B or A and B. You can apply for just C, or you're not allowed, you're in a B.
Well, if you're
category.
grandfathered in too, you could get another unit if you only.
If you only
Depending
had
on
one,
what
you
you-
could be a C and a B, or a C and an A, yeah. Yeah, so those are, there you go.
And then where does our, now that we've changed to talk about owner occupied, we had this other rented in part. Is that?
I think we leave that, I think we leave, oh, that absolute, no, that absolutely, but that absolutely is owner occupied.
Right, and you can only have one of those,
Yeah.
and there's no cap, so that takes that
That's it.
simplifies it.
In
Okay.
part, and D is not allowed. There you go, A, B, C, D, E.
No, you wouldn't even need the owner in part is owner occupied.
Owner occupied, including owner in part,
Yeah.
including rented in part. Okay, here you go. Perfect, right there.
It's right, it's on Adam's notepad.
Okay,
Oh, I did mine too. but I moved
Well, so
E to
let's-
D and E to D and-
okay, so then let's move on then to the grandfathering. A one-time grandfathering recognizing existing operating to qualify, a property owner shall provide an Ulster County Department of Finance certificate of authority dated prior to December 1st, 2021, and provide proof of operation of an STR between September 1st. Why did we say
I
2016?
don't know.
Oh, no, we said within the last 5
Yeah, yeah.
years.
Yeah,
Okay,
you
so
were-
went
you-
from-
Yeah,
We gave it that window.
because the 5 years is our non-conforming.
Yeah.
So that's why we gave it that 5-year window.
So if there happens to be an STR in I or NR, does this apply to, are they able to continue
No,
operating?
They would not, because that would supersede it. I believe. We could ask Mary Lou on that. Should we also say in there, A, B, and C, the C would be, or the A, B, C, and then the other would become D, is that they would have to, I'm trying to think how to word it. They have to get the safety inspection.
Yes,
Yeah.
and they have to
Because-
pass,
Yeah, because we don't say that there.
they have to pass it.
Safety and fire, correct?
And be compliant by the end of the year.
So who offer a one-time recognizing existing SDR units operating prior to December 31st, existing units of property owners shall provide department prior to and provide proof of operation, and we'll add an and. Would be submit a completed application and trying to find where it is about the, sorry, as we've done all these ads, it keeps putting blank pages. Submitted a completed application and it's not pass an inspection, what would we say? And
Why not pass an inspection?
yeah,
Maybe that's not the right. word.
yeah, it's not the right word.
Yeah, because we're saying they need to meet all the sort of technical requirements that we are
Be
outlining.
compliant with,
Have a complete application and,
be compliant with all.
fire safety inspection.
You say state, local, and like we do in all the other laws, maybe?
Yeah.
State,
Yeah.
local, and
Here.
Well, we can just say this shall be inspected.
Subject to annual fire and safety inspection. I
Yep,
guess.
there you
You're
go.
right, because if you fail the inspection, then.
Then you
that's-
don't get
so,
it.
Yeah,
So, so the and would be, have,
so what we're kind of saying is that each person that gets a permit basically starts a file.
mhm,
And you you, as long as you turn your application in and are passing inspections and all that, then that your file kind of stays there.
Yeah, yeah. And you fall into, are we gonna do the ABCD category or?
I don't-
I think we necessarily have to call it an ABCD. We just have to define, we have to add the owner occupied and what it means with the 180 days.
So I have a question.
So let me just say this here. So, and have submitted a complete application. And how did you word it again, Aaron? It was
Subject to.
Oh, subject to,
That's how.
oh, yes. And be subject to an annual fire inspection,
Fire and safety.
fire and safety. Okay. Then any property owners who fail to provide such documentation shall be required to file and be considered a new operating short-term transient rental. So
Yes.
if you submit that and without proof, and then grandfathered units shall be allowed to operate subject to biannual application renewal and annual inspection until such use ceases to exist or the property changes ownership. So if you're grandfathered in, you're always going to get your permit.
So I have a question. The
Mhm.
grandfathering makes me think non-conforming, but they're not really non-conforming because
They're not non-conforming because they're not illegal right
Right.
now.
so is it really grandfathering or like, I'm just like,
It is
Is-
grandfathering because
Okay.
we're saying you are guaranteed a permit if you do these four
Right.
things.
And you're showing a time
Yeah.
frame and a.
Right. but then.
It's grandfathering because we're not considering them as part of the cap.
Right, but then insofar as D goes, we're saying though, that anybody that gets a permit, a new permit also shall be allowed to operate subject to biannual application renewal and annual inspection.
Right, that D is just there, that D is there to say, if your grandfather, sometimes when you're grandfathered in, you never have to come back for a permit.
Oh, right,
What this is trying to say is, you still have to come back every 2 years for your permit, you still have to get your annual inspection. The grandfathering is we're allowing you to get your permit
To start. Okay.
I think,
it's legalizing because we're now passing this law.
I think it does two things. Number one is it alleviates our very vocal public's worry that they're not gonna get one and they're already operating.
right,
So-
or they have three in their,
And number two is quite honestly, we don't know what it is, and that alleviates our trying to figure out how many to make legal. So this gives us a base, so they're like our test group, we give them a little wiggle room, and then we seal that grandfathered in. Eventually, those will sunset, they'll sell the property, they'll stop renting it out, they'll let their permits fail, and over the next
Right.
20 years,
Right.
there'll be very few grandfathered in, and there'll just be new permits going
right.
forward.
But we did say earlier that a new permit basically kind of does the same thing. That,
Right, well, we
Once you
should,
get one.
when we get down to the renewal of the permit
Right.
section, we should clarify that once a permit is granted,
right,
it will continue
until you.
to be eligible for renewal
Right.
so long as the
Right.
person, provided
Okay.
you pass the fire
Um,
inspection.
And so that's the other question I have is we're also saying that this idea of having two per person or per applicant doesn't apply to the existing ones?
No, we're not.
Okay, so if they are doing more than that, then they've got to
Yeah.
choose.
If they're doing existing 3, or if they're doing something that's not allowed, maybe we should add a section in this grandfathering, we add an exception. In no case shall a person be allowed to operate more than 2 separate properties. Or
Yeah,
we can just refer to the section of code.
Even in the grandfather?
Yeah, yeah, because that, well, what do you
Hey,
think?
Again, I think it's, I've been trying to think of a good example and I still can't come up with one. But I still think that if a person say had 3 or 4 right now, I don't think we're gonna come up with any examples where somebody's got 10 or something like that, although I guess we could. But again, eventually these will be sunsetted, I
Well,
don't,
yeah.
Well, if you put what Mike's saying in, then we could put in a grievance.
Well, it's not even a
CBA.
grievance. Anybody on a number can apply for a variance.
Okay.
They can apply to the ZBA for a variance to this.
Mhm.
It's in the zoning code, so
So that's why I was
So-
bringing up non-conforming.
So they go in and
because
say,
those
I
would
have
be
3,
non-conforming.
and they said I can only have 2, so I go and get a variance, so I can.
you can
continue
go
that.
try to get a variance.
Yeah.
You gotta prove the reason for it, so.
But again, my concern on this is somebody has this isn't, an $80 investment. They have a multi-$100,000, property that's specifically bought for that. All of a sudden that becomes defunct. So what do they do with it? It was, on December 31st and every day before they were able to do this and now they can't do it anymore. What do they do with that property? It goes, they sell it, it goes back in inventory,
Well,
they rent
yeah,
it
what
out
was
with an inn.
advised in this training is that you basically create a non-conforming exit strategy. I forget what they call it, where you're allowed to operate for 2 years, but then after
Yeah,
that.
they said
you're not.
basically say you're allowed to operate for 2 years and then it sunsets out.
Okay.
Um,
I mean, to me, that would be better than just saying no. And now you have these properties that you owe a mortgage on, taxes, and then 3 months from now, you're never getting income on them again.
Yeah.
I don't know how many of them there are. I know we had 1 or 2 people that were vocal about it.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not sure. But like I said, again, this isn't a small,
Because if they went for
Expense that they have.
variance, a variance would go on forever, because the variance is against the land. The land could always be used for that, but if
True.
you put it to a 2-year, then you're limiting it and like.
Yeah,
Adam
I
said,
don't know what
with
the 2-year
sunset,
really does, though. The 2-year does just
Allows
basically,
them a
it
little-
allows them to prolong it.
That's
but-
well, what
Well,
the
then-
lawyer in that training said was that it gives, it's basically you're recognizing, you're giving them time to make a recoup on their investment.
yeah, I could turn it into to an inn. I could sell it.
You could
I
sell it.
could, I could.
Turn
I
it
could-
into long-term rental.
I can rent it long term. I have 2 years to figure out what I need to do.
Or
rather than
we
4
say
months.
they're already existing and we just allow them to continue as non-conforming, and we say that in the code.
Yeah.
And any
Yeah.
any property owner who is currently operating more than 2 properties shall be allowed to grandfather.
And I would think that again, because these they can't pass to somebody else, they can't sell it off.
Okay.
That eventually it won't be there. This isn't again, we've accomplished what we needed to do. It's already out of inventory. Eventually it'll be back in inventory, maybe not in a year or 2, maybe 5, maybe 20, but eventually it'll be back in.
Well, maybe,
Maybe,
maybe not. Maybe we'll
Huh?
just pass. Well, no, passing it down doesn't.
Can't do that.
Yeah.
yeah. Like I said, one of 2 things will happen.
So,
Take it with you to the grave.
so which way do you want? 2 years or grandfathered in, non-conforming use shall be
2
considered.
years. I do, because if it were my property, I would want that time to at least get myself an exit strategy, as you say.
Okay, so,
Well, how do you feel about the grandfathering those ones in?
I don't know how many there are. I would
Right.
like to know that. I would like.
I don't
to
think we know.
That's what I'm
Right.
saying. That's something I would like to know.
Yeah.
And I've heard from a couple of people, I heard 1 4 and 1 5 owner properties out there.
That's.
See that,
total.
I'll be honest, somebody owning 5 houses and that it's doing 4 short-term rentals.
They're running a
that's-
business.
Yeah.
anyway. That's,
Other-
that's.
There is
not just
100%
for
no
added
doubt.
income.
Yeah.
That's not just added income.
No.
I don't know.
You know,
I don't wanna be
here's
hard,
another
but I don't
idea. I don't know if it solves it or not. Say anybody who wants to own more than 2 has to go to the planning board for a special use permit for everything above 2.
Yeah, that doesn't put a variance out there then.
And it doesn't run it with the property.
Right.
Then-
But
Right.
only for existing. Are you talking
Or
about?
grandfather.
Yeah,
Well, I don't know that we could legally do it just for
Yeah.
existing.
See, I
think
don't
we'd have
want to open it up going forward, but like I said, if somebody spent, $600,000 buying properties.
Let's
when it was
not do the
legal,
2 years. Let's just grandfather them in and as not, we'll just say,
We're praying we don't have 10, right? We're thinking we got
I-
2,
I,
3.
again, we can't
We
guess.
can't know.
Well,
Yeah, we
this-
can't know.
The county might have a.
this is gonna go to the county
Yeah.
and
Okay.
our planning board. Let's put it in
All
there
right,
one
do
way or the other.
grandfather then,
Yeah.
But I think they have to,
Grandfather in, as a
As a
non-conforming.
norm.
as a
Okay.
non-conforming, but they gotta have
Um,
some way to,
Again,
yeah, if I had that much money ever in my life.
No, it's wild though, because you talk to people and, I think of all the great businesses that were great businesses until they weren't, until they were laws, and you're like, and, again, giving them 2 years out,
Yeah.
that's not terrible, but again, it's not like, hey, I did Uber before there was restrictions, or eBay before there was taxes.
Well, we
or
learned yesterday how
cryptocurrency.
this started. This started with
Yeah.
2 guys who shared an apartment in San Francisco and couldn't pay their rent, so they started renting out floor space.
Yeah.
And that's how,
Sublet, like a
and they
sublet
turned it
plan.
into a multi-billion-dollar
God
business.
bless them, man, wish I thought of it, yeah. But,
I'm just trying to find that section where we say
Oh,
Yeah,
2 units.
oh,
I just want to reference that number.
so that is.
Here it is, H3.
3. Yep.
So we'll say grandfathered units. Shall not be subject to subsection,
My severe hope is all the folks that were at public comment, like all 30 of them, that's all the rentals we had. Like that's.
That's,
Yeah,
I bet
that's not
it's
gonna happen.
No,
Nah,
it's,
nah,
it's still a hope. I hope we get 30
No.
grandfathered in.
yeah. No, I bet more.
We should have an office pool. See who's closest.
Yeah, I don't
something
know.
subject to,
So, but do we need to say that they're non-conforming?
yes, that's what I'm about to say.
Okay.
So shall not be subject to section 140 dash, what's this? We'll just say section H3 of this code.
That non-conforming is different than the property non-conforming.
Yeah.
It's
So
like,
who-
And-
so are we gonna-
Shall be considered,
No. Well, the only person that really needs to understand it is code enforcement. officer.
so grandfathered units shall not be subject to section H3 of this code and shall be considered non-conforming. Wait a minute. Grandfathered units which exceed
Yes,
subsection H3
yes.
shall be, okay, yeah.
And if the county planning board comes back and they have a real problem with that, I'm sure they're gonna tell us.
Yeah,
Yeah, they will.
and I think then if we want it to, then I think that 2-year,
Yeah.
you get
It's
the
a
first
very-
permit, but then that's it.
That gives them an out.
Yeah.
It's not this way, it's
Yeah.
not all,
Mhm.
but at least it's a limit of something. We're trying to adhere to the county,
Trying to help, trying to help.
trying to help, trying to adhere.
Well, the county did say we should figure out how many exist.
Yeah.
And
this
so, and
Right,
allow them
so-
to
And
continue.
allow them to continue.
Mhm.
So I think that's,
Okay.
Because they don't know, because Airbnb won't tell them.
So then we're saying the cap of new non-grandfathered STR permits. Initial caps shall be established for the year 2022 at the town board 2022 organizational meeting. So
There we
we're
go.
allowing grandfathering in from September through the end of December. At the organizational meeting in 2022, we're gonna know how many we got, and we're gonna set the cap for 2022. Then the cap number of available permits, including those that have been, we're not including those that have been grandfathered. That actually, yeah, shall be established for the following year by the town board annually on or before, and I changed it to August 1st rather than September 30th. Because the tax rolls come out July 1st, that gives us a month. That way people have an additional 2 months utilizing a percentage of the number of housing units on the town of Rochester essential final tax roll for that year and the number of grandfather permits for that same year. Then I took out the 1 to 3% because that way we can establish whatever we want.
And then for the first year, do we need to say, because in the first year where we're setting it at the organizational meeting,
Yep.
basically all the new permits, they're waiting until we
Yep,
set that.
we're not opening up for new permit application. When this law passes, the period of September 1st through December 31, we are only accepting grandfathered permits.
So do we need to lay out some sort of time frame for new permits? Because,
Do we
or
know
can
how-
we address that through the application?
I think we can say it in the law.
What do we know at that point? We're hoping that
Um,
they finished all the grandfathered ones,
Yeah.
so that they can accept the new ones.
Right.
That's what I'm worried about, is what is their backlog? It's
Well,
a backlog.
well, that's the whole thing is that there should be very few on January 1st that aren't
know.
grandfathered
Right.
in.
Yeah.
You know, just a handful of people
Right.
saying,
Right.
I wasn't grandfathered in, I'm planning my business plan for the year is to be an Airbnb, I want the permit. That, I think that number would be very low on January 1. Now, it might increase throughout the year, you know,
Right.
as things change, but, you know, I wouldn't even take a stab at. what
Well,
that
we're
number would
gonna
be.
get up to that section here
Okay.
coming up. So
Okay, what you're saying, Adam, makes sense to me. I guess I was just thinking about,
I mean, come January 1, you're gonna have people who probably could have been grandfathered in and never quite got around to it. And sorry, you had a 4-month window of time. Now you're a new permit.
Right.
If you,
Yep.
you're not grandfathered in if you don't apply during that period
but
of time.
in our time frame that we set out
Mhm.
down below, you can apply before January 1. And then we set that, like, if you apply after November 1st, I think is, then your permit's good for,
Well,
so that's all I was wondering.
I think
about.
that time frame though, before January 1 is for future. I think we're gonna have to be clear on
That's
this
what I-
initial,
Yeah,
that the law takes effect for grandfathered units in the window of time. We'll write a section
Okay.
in about timeline.
okay,
So the non-refundable permit application fee and inspection fee is established by resolution and shall be submitted for each new application, and each biannual renewal application. So that's clear that it's a biannual, yeah, that's every 2 years.
Every 2 years.
Yeah, I'm making sure I wrote it right. So they have to get a separate permit and inspection for each dwelling unit. So the application process. So the initial permit application to operate as short-term shall be submitted to the code enforcement officer prior to operation. Property owners shall register with the county's commissioner of finance, receive a certificate of authority. Initial permit application shall include the following. There's where we could say the time frame. New applications for permits will not be accepted prior to January 1, 2022.
right.
For applications to operate.
We want to say biennial, not biannual.
Biennial?
Biennial,
Mhm.
BIENNIAL.
Sorry, say it again, B, I'm sorry.
Okay, BIENNIAL,
Mhm.
which means taking place.
Is it-
every other
And
year.
it's not hyphened.
No, it's not. It's all
Okay.
single. It's not biannual. Biannual is twice a year.
Yeah, that's what I was,
Good catch.
yeah, shall be, that's what I was thinking. I was like, biannual is
Well,
twice a
I
year.
said plants,
Yeah,
and I
you-
remember
I
they're
know.
biennial.
So
and I have
with
one in
each
grid.
new
See what my
application
definition is.
and each biennial
Annual.
renewal
That ought to
application.
confuse the heck out of people.
Put it in the definitions.
Biennial.
No, if it's already defined in the
Produces
dictionary.
It's years, but
Well,
exactly
this
what that
was-
means.
I Googled it, but it was Webster.
So applications to operate a new STR shall be effective as of January, or not effective, shall be
Available.
Available.
available as of January 1.
Wait a second. When's
I
our
was
organizational
just thinking the
meeting?
same thing. On
After
the
the
first Monday after the organizational meeting.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Do it.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Because we
We don't,
Who's
don't
got
want
have,
to accept,
Who's got a calendar on their phone handy?
we don't want to accept applications if we don't know what the cap
Yeah.
is.
there you go.
What's the first Thursday in January
Seventh.
2022?
January the 7th.
Oh, so we're probably gonna have our organization, have to have our organization meeting before then because of paychecks. So we're probably gonna have to have our organizational meeting on like the 3rd, which is a Monday.
Mhm.
So-
It's gonna have
So
to
it'll
be
be
the
the
following
10th.
month, the 10th, yeah.
Yep,
Monday the 10th.
it'll be available as of January 10.
10 days
Or
before
the Monday following the organizational meeting.
Is this for?
But we
just
have to have the
initial-
organizational meeting in the first week, so
Yeah.
But,
that
but
is.
is this every year or is this
No.
just the
No.
first one?
This is just the
Shall
first
be
one.
available
There you go.
as of January 10, 2022,
There you go. So no matter what time the organizational meeting hits,
as long as it's in that
After that,
first
yeah.
week.
Yeah. okay, cool.
Yeah, that has to.
So we should pencil in a meeting on the 3rd.
Probably.
All right.
We
6
had
months
it
in
on,
advance.
We
yeah.
should have those applications ready though
Yeah.
before that.
Oh, absolutely. Now the application process, the initial permit, now this is where we're talking about relaxing that, sorry, the owner occupied. The
That's.
occupied in part.
Mm.
Should we just say occupied in part doesn't, I mean, just doesn't even require?
I think, I don't know, we've discussed some pretty big changes tonight. And I think one of them is that the cap that we're setting will likely just be on non-owner occupied rental units.
So we
And so
probably
I
need to
feel
say
like-
that in the cap, though. Town has determined a cap shall be established on the number of new short-term rental permits. So we should say new short-term transient rental, non-owner occupied permits.
Right.
Is that what we're saying?
Owner, non-occupied.
We still haven't defined owner occupied. Are we gonna say the 180 days for owner occupied?
I think that's what we
Okay.
talked about.
So then the cap is on new short-term transient rental, non-owner occupied permits.
The other way to do it, if we still want to be cautious, is we could say that the board will set two different caps.
I think it gets too confusing.
Okay, all right.
We've already been accused of making this too confusing. so.
Okay.
I think we say non-owner occupied permits. I'm gonna go back and just put in a placeholder of definition for owner occupied and non-owner occupied,
We went back.
and I'll,
You're halfway through.
Yeah, yeah.
We're back to the beginning.
well, no, we just gotta put
But
that
it's just the
definition.
same
Season.
10 sections that
Yep.
we're
It's
changing.
still
Yeah.
the same definitions of the same things. We just keep moving them around.
Yeah. It's gonna be the greatest law of all time.
Well, sometimes it takes all these tweaks, because if you
And
don't
not
deal with these things, then you get out there and you go, oh, we didn't think about that.
Yeah.
And that's where they.
And that's
can get-
still probably gonna happen.
It will,
but-
Exactly.
it will, but, and you're gonna have some that say we're horrible and some that say we're good, and I don't think we're as onerous as some that I've read.
I think we're doing a nice job, and then again, it's nice to have the oversight.
So
of the
owner
local
occupied, I'm
planning
just gonna
board.
write 180 days for myself, so I have a note here. And non-owner occupied is one that the owner does not live there 180 days. You know, I mean, it's that simple,
Opposite of owner occupied.
yeah.
Can you
Yeah.
say that?
And also, especially given the fact that the existing STRs are just gonna be allowed.
Yeah.
I think we'll get a lot of very straightforward,
Yeah.
honest
Input.
input.
This is what we're doing with this thing.
Yeah, because there's no,
Yeah.
and I think that'll be good.
So then do we want to exempt the rented in part from any of this? I'm just throwing that out there.
They still, I feel because they've got people coming and going, they still need an inspection.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
have to,
Okay.
Yeah, I think
I
now
don't
that we've
feel really-
changed the cap, I think that kind of takes care
Should
of
we,
it.
can we say that okay, otherwise I would say you could say the rented in part just only requires a inspection.
Yeah.
And no other permits, no application, no permits,
No
just
site plan.
just an annual inspection.
Or sketch plan.
I wouldn't mind that so much as long as they're inspected. I worry about that.
Well,
I think-
again, if our competent inspectors are going out there and they see something, they're gonna say something, you know.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
If we do that,
What if
every
it's
year.
like your tax form where we've got like these 3 different types? It's like type 1 is rented in part, and then it's like, if type 1, skip to the bottom.
yeah.
And
Yeah,
then.
but we have to still address it. We can't do it
No,
in
no,
the
no,
form. The
I know,
law
I'm
has to say
saying,
it,
I know, I'm
so,
trying to
yeah.
think about how we did some practice, and so therefore we would say. At the bottom of this is that rented in part, or at the top, rented in part. Still have to complete an application, but will be exempt from,
The
providing,
Site plan.
because we still want to know if they're,
Okay,
Septic
Operating?
thing and
You
the-
wanna
Okay.
know that
does
they
that make sense?
exist.
Yeah.
it does.
Wanna know.
And maybe we don't even address it. Let's just leave it as is. Let them go through the application, because we're gonna get to where we've really simplified the site plan.
Are you going, we're gonna define it now as just a sketch, so they don't. feel
Yeah,
like they
so
have
I'm
go
coming
an
up to that
Yeah.
section now. I'm going back forward here.
so we're in.
Going back forward. That's an-
Well, I was going forward, then I went
Okay.
backwards. Now I'm going back forward,
Back
Back
when
forward.
you're
I
as
got it.
in past
I got
tense.
Like when you're sitting in a train and the other one. starts to
So,
move, you're like,
yeah,
which one's
description, floor plan of each bedroom and sleeping room. Oh, wait, before that, sorry. No, it was that,
Yeah, that's G.
yeah.
That's only change. That's.
So-
where the changes start.
We say this may be an approximately to scale sketch plan, professionally plans are not required. So the people are like, oh, I gotta hire it. You can take a piece of graph paper and draw out your room and approximately to scale and write in some dimensions, and we just need to know where it is. And the reason, there's people that said, well, he's gonna come inspect it. But yes, he needs to know what he's walking into before he goes to the inspection. So he comes in with the paperwork, he already knows, he's done his homework. There needs to be a fire extinguisher here. Otherwise, he's walking in blind, doesn't know what he's seeing. It's like the building inspector gets plans of the building before he goes and inspects it. The fire inspector is getting plans of the space before he goes and inspects it. That's my reasoning.
I
So-
think people are gonna be amazed at how many places they're gonna need a fire extinguisher.
Yep.
It's a simple thing.
And then the plat section, I added the word aerial, submit an aerial plat of the property, not just a plat of the property, because everybody thought it meant survey. Then I added this plat, does not need to be a survey. This is easily obtained free of charge from many online sources.
Mhm.
Now, we all know that the parcel lines, well, not all of us, but many of us know that the parcel lines don't line up well with the pictures. Doesn't really matter. It just shows us a reference.
If you take that and mark the bounding owners. that
Yeah,
would help
exactly,
with, you know,
exactly.
Yeah, there you go.
Just print like I did tonight with the other diagram you were showing.
Yeah.
I just asked the questions and then labeled.
And then I just corrected a jurisdiction as letter K. L is a copy of the Ulster County Commissioner of Finance Certificate of Authority. You got to give us a copy of it. And we can provide with the application the process from the county of how to do it. Because those people that say, well, Airbnb collects my taxes, the county states, you should still register with us. There's a place on there where you check off, I pay my taxes through Airbnb, but the county still wants to know how many dates stay, because Airbnb won't tell. So the county wants to be able to
Would
at
we
least
make
have a
packet
record
for
of it.
these- For the applicants, I would.
It'll be
hope?
part of the application.
Yeah.
Yeah, yep. So we say the inspections shall be done for the initial permitting and annually thereafter. And then they must comply with building code requirements and have shown no open violation. So if you have an open violation on your property, you can't apply.
You're right.
So here's the renewal permit section. Applicant provide the town of Rochester with any changes to the original underlying application together with such additional documentation. All of it would be on forms prescribed by the code enforcement along with the current application fee. Renewal application shall never be subject to any cap provided the property remains under the same ownership. So once you've gotten your permit, you're never going to be subject to the cap for a renewal.
Right.
Um,
And that was something people were worried about.
My only thought on that, and maybe I'm overthinking it, say it is owner occupied and now they've moved out and they no longer owner occupied. I guess it still existed.
Right. I
Yeah.
think that would probably be at the discretion. of the code
Yeah,
enforcement.
yeah, I'm gonna just leave that alone, so. We took out that the copies must be displayed in the dwelling unit in the place where it's, oh no, I just moved that down, I'm sorry. I moved it from 1 to 2. So the permit to operate in any given year will expire except an initial permit approved after September 1st on a calendar year shall be allowed to run through December 1st. So if you get one in September or later, you're good till the following December. Exterior advertising is prohibited. I forgot to go get the language on the class 1 home occupation size. I just have to insert that in there. There is a small sign that's allowed in class 1. Like Chris said, just a sign on the side that is, a name of the house kind of thing. But what we don't want is a 4x8 billboard going, like Edith Joe's.
Yeah.
They have
Yeah,
one of
that's
those
nice.
up on, I think it's 23. I don't know which way you go up when you go up north.
Yeah.
Rent me, it says.
Oh,
and it's
yeah,
this
yeah, yeah.
Beautiful,
Yeah.
beautiful house. It's
Yeah.
it's a beautiful, with a
Yeah.
big phone number and
Yeah.
it is affordable.
Yeah, we don't, so you're allowed a small labeling sign to, if you want to,
Running brook.
yeah, if you want to call it, home away from home or whatever you want to call it, but. And then we say you can't be in any temporary structure, tent, trailer, camper, lean-to. House rules. And then the complaints. And there we
Like, do you
go.
want the sign language?
You got it?
Yeah.
Sure. Exterior advertising is prohibited, except,
A dwelling or it may have one non-illuminated accessory use ground sign.
hang on one second.
Illuminated. Accessory use.
Ground,
Telephone and stuff.
well, it can be a ground sign. In this case, it could be a building sign too,
Ground
though.
or building. sign.
Ground or. Building the right word for it?
Or
We gotta-
dwelling, I don't know.
We'd have to look back in our sign definitions.
Yeah.
It's,
Oh,
but go ahead and finish this
um,
first. Gra-
Not to exceed 12 square feet in area. To identify the STR, I guess it says a home occupation.
That's a pretty good size sign. I'm looking at it on the floor.
3 by
here.
4.
Yeah, I know.
That's like the sign, that's like this.
So each one of these squares is exactly a
Foot.
foot.
That's
So
what I
2
was
by
doing.
6, 1,
Yeah.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
That's what I was doing on.
Pretty healthy size.
That's what I was.
Yeah.
doing too.
But that's a minimal. Do you want to look up that real quick in the
Yeah.
sign section? It's a ground mounted or.
It can't be attached to an electrical.
I see, wall sign.
Oh, yeah, there we go. Existing use, ground or wall sign. The wall sign is a
Is ground freestanding?
Yeah,
Okay. So we call it freestanding or wall.
okay. Oh, did you get that from another code?
And I'm looking at our chart.
No, the original language where it said ground.
No, that's in our code.
Oh, well, that needs to be fixed to say freestanding, but anyway. Okay. So we got it.
Alright.
Now, do you think we need, by defining owner occupied and non-owner occupied, so we want to go back to the two. So we're going to say you can have one owner occupied and one non-owner occupied in the two. Because the
Mhm.
owner occupied is 180 days.
Yep.
So that was H3.
Yep.
I think we've really improved this considerably. So no owner entity composed of similar individuals may hold permits for greater than two properties at any given time. There we should say one owner and one non-owner occupied. STR. That makes sense?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. I'm gonna hit save here, make sure I
Okay.
save it. We'll save this as, what's today's date? 6/24. And I'll get clarify the owner occupied and non-owner occupied language. So what I'd like to do then is email this out to all you guys to look at, and then next Thursday, we'll adopt a resolution to get it out there. I already talked to the county, and I think they'll allow us to get it under the radar
Oh,
because,
really?
well, their meeting is not until,
Oh, it's the second. They're not doing it. Oh, I see.
well, their meeting is not till the 7th, right? Yes. Our meeting is the 1st.
Right.
Their meeting is the first Wednesday,
And their
which is the
cutoff is-
6th.
Their cutoff is usually,
Their cutoff is this Friday,
okay,
but cutoff is tomorrow. But I already talked to Rob, and since it's a re-referral,
okay,
we do have a busy agenda, but it's a re-referral. He's gonna let it slide.
okay.
So,
As long as.
and
they
then it
have
can
enough
get
time
to
do
our
that
planning board for either their regular meeting or their workshop.
in July.
And then we could potentially schedule our public hearing for our July workshop meeting. Or we could schedule a special public hearing. And then potentially we could vote on it in August, we could get it filed into the county to the state by September 1st. Oh, yeah, oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, the public hearing wouldn't be till the end of July, so if we adopt it on the 1st, not adopt it, but move it forward, we've got 3 weeks to get the public notice, hearing notice out, so. Okay. A lot of work, but I think you did a good job. The copier contract, I'm just giving you an update, so. I think I told you our Xerox lease expires in mid-September, or it might be the end of September. I did look, we have a 30-day out clause, so we have to notify them 30 days or more that we're gonna not continue. So we have until August. I have that one company whose name I don't remember, who provided us a quote, because he called me like a year and a half ago, wanted our business. I also reached out to Toshiba because our fish solutions recommended them. They gave me a quote. They gave me 2 quotes. They gave me a quote for what we have now. The guy came and he talked to Kate, he talked to the ladies here. And there were some upgrades that, including one, which is a letter slot where you can put or an envelope slot where you can put envelopes in and it will print for you.
Mhm.
And they all were like amazed at that and beyond energized, and just the cost savings alone of the time. Chrissy's nodding, I can tell. I feel the nod in the back of my head here.
Yes,
she'll The amount of time it takes to label these and everything, it would just be such a cost saving. So to be fair, I emailed the first guy and said, would you provide a quote for these upgrades? So next week, I didn't get his quote yet. Next week, I'm gonna bring you the two quotes. It is a small enough value for the year that we only need two quotes. It doesn't have to go out for RFP. It falls under our 3 quote criteria. So we'll have the two. You can decide if you want to think about it for a month. We can vote on it at the end of July or early August.
Do they look better, or the one quote you have, does it look, it sounds like the machine is.
They're very comparable to the pricing of what we have now.
So we've budgeted that already.
Yeah,
So it's
that's
not
what I
gonna
was-
adjust. It's not
And
gonna
actually,
impact the budget.
I don't want to talk too much about apples to apples because not that I know if the guy's watching right now, but they were comparable or less to our existing
Very
pricing. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, because I was,
yeah.
was why my
Yeah.
question there.
Yeah, they were comparable or less, and I'll get you those quotes. He did send me a brochure of the machine. It's not probably easily scannable though. What I might have to do is just sort of have it in my office if you guys want to stop by and look at it, because it's a like multi-fold thing. I can try to scan it.
I would look at it, but I would certainly take what the ladies that are gonna
Yeah.
use it every day
Yeah.
say.
Anyway, that's where that stands. I just
Our
wanted,
brochure.
I wanted to give you guys an update on
Great.
that. So,
That sounds good.
the band renewal, so we are going to contract on the not the renewal, but the $150,000 band for the Millhook Bridge. We're going to contract on July 1st. We have secured 0.75% interest rate, which is pretty amazing.
That's great.
Then as soon as we did, and then it's a 5-year ban, but it's renewable on a yearly basis. So we can choose to pay it off as quickly as we want. Now, of course, when we renew, we're subject to whatever the interest rate is at renewal.
Right.
But for the first year, it's 0.75. Also got this notice from Sterling that our ban that we took out 2 years ago, that has a current balance of 171,165, is coming due July 16th. Now we have another ban that has approximately 100,000. It was like 101, I believe. That's going to come due in September. We had budgeted 140,000 to pay down the bands. We've been doing 70,000 on each band.
Right.
I was prepared to do that. This band was from Sterling, not Selective, that's our insurance company, was 3.5% last year. We could,
Which one of those two or both?
well, this one is 3.5. I think the other one is like
That's the
3.2.
one that's due in July.
This one is
Yeah,
due in
that's what I
July.
thought, yeah.
That was one.
I talked to our bond counsel last night. And he said that, we are not required to go back to Sterling at the renewal. I checked on that. So we could pay down portion of this, take the balance and go to the Bank of Greene County and get a 0.75 loan. Sterling has already told me that they can't do that kind of low. They don't do bands that often because of the small number of business that they do. We went to them because they are our bank, and it was a convenience thing when we
Right.
went to them. So there's two choices I was thinking. One is we could pay this off entirely. We could take the 140 that we planned on. We could pull a 31,000 out of fund balance, pay this off entirely, be done with it. But then come September, we have to make some payment on that other one. We
Right.
can't just ignore it.
What if you did it the opposite?
Well, we have to, or we could pay off 70 on this like we
Right.
had planned on,
Right,
but renew it at probably 0.75.
Right,
And then the one in September, when it comes due, we can also renew it at, it may not be 0.75 in September, but it's probably not going to be much more than 1%.
right.
So
okay.
we can renew both of these, move away from Sterling and go with
I
the,
like the idea of using the budgeted money to pay them down and then.
I've been trying to pay them down
Yes.
simultaneously.
Because we,
So
with the second one that you just said, Mike, we'd save about $2,500 on this one alone. So if we paid 70,000 towards it.
Right.
In the interest, yeah, that'd still be a significant savings.
I mean, if we wanted to, we could pay 71,165 and just bring it down to an even
right,
100.
well, that's what I was gonna ask you, and then if you combine, are we allowed to combine the two?
No, because they come at different time, do at different
Right,
times.
okay.
So we have to make this renewable on the date that it comes due. So it comes due July 16th. The new band would take, what I'll do is I'll reach out to them and ask them to get the language for us for next week's meeting.
Right.
We'll get that and then, so the new ban will take effect July 16th, 2021. But it'll be at considerably lower. So
That's
we'll,
what I'm saying.
what I'll say is, let's pay, I know we budgeted 70, but let's pay 71,165 just to bring it down to an even 100. Then in September, when the other ones due, we'll pay 70 on that. And then we're down to about 30,000 on that one. And
So we're at
then,
130,000.
and then next year, we budget 130,000
Right.
to
And then
pay
we
off the
can-
other two, and then they're all done.
That's
Yeah,
great.
nice, yeah.
And if we're able to get them with the green thing,
Green County.
then we'll save a
Yeah.
few $1,000.
Substantial amount.
Yes.
A few thousand. This has an interest due of 59.90. So my guess is the next year, plus it's a lower amount, so the interest would probably be less than $1,000 or about 1,000.
Right.
So it's a considerable savings.
Yeah, it'd be $757 next year.
Yeah.
I did the math.
She was
There you
already
go.
with her computer.
Okay, so we don't need a resolution for that. I just wanted some feedback. I'll move forward. Ask them to draw up the language for us for next Thursday.
Yeah.
For this one, I wanted to find out if you wanted to just pay this off totally, but we'll just pay off the 71.
Then go to the two.
Yeah.
Yep,
No, I
okay.
like that thinking, Mike. That's
Yeah.
good.
And I will tell you that the bond counsel said he said, working it that way is a really smart way to do it.
Yeah.
So, okay. The assessor, I asked Mike to reach out to that first applicant that we had. We've had the 2 applications. She is available next week,
Okay.
any day except Monday. But after, I gotta look back at his email. Let me stop my screen share here. Because we now have to meet, if the full board meets, it has to be a public meeting. I was hoping that it was still extended through July 5th and we would have been okay. We could do one of 2 things. If the full board wants to interview her, fine either way, we need to have a meeting where we open it, then we go into executive session. And then we have to meet in person. Mike is willing to come to the meeting. If we want to do a subcommittee of only 2 board members to interview, then we could do it by Zoom because then it's not a town board meeting. I think for a decision like this, my feeling is that we should probably all of us interview. But that's just my opinion. I wanted to just get feedback.
It's a pretty important position.
I agree. But I think we need to move quickly based on that
Right.
resume.
Do you
So
want us to look at our calendars?
she's available any day next week except Tuesday, anytime after 5 PM. So next week, we know there's we
We have
are
a
meeting
board
on
meeting,
Thursday. We have a
yeah.
board meeting on Thursday. We could see if she could come.
Because I can't do Monday or Wednesday. So
Um,
Thursday would work best for me.
We could see if she could come. We could schedule a pre-meeting to our regular meeting, which is at 6:30.
Schedule it.
5.
or 5:30.
5:30?
Yeah, we want to give a little gap because people might. start-
Yeah, you're right. Well, we could close the door
Yeah.
until that time
Right.
too. 5? We have a separate meeting, a special meeting at 5 PM on next Thursday prior, and then we finish by 6, and then we have this, or, if it runs 10 minutes late.
Can you do that, Adam?
I'm on vacation.
He's on
Oh, you're on
vacation,
vacation.
yeah.
Yes.
But no matter what, he's gonna be on vacation.
For
so.
you.
Yeah. If we were still zooming in, I'd probably take it from the tent at the beach, but yes.
Well, you won't make me feel so bad
I
then,
won't
since
then.
you're not zooming in.
I would have put the background. The mountain.
Okay, that
Um,
works for me.
Does that work for you?
Yes.
Okay, I'll check it with Chris, but, so we'll go ahead and schedule a special meeting. Well, let me check with Mike to check with her, because she said anytime after 5 PM. So, but
So 5 or 5:30.
yeah,
Or even
I'll
5:15.
I'll check with her, we'll
Right.
check with Mike and check with her tomorrow right away, and then we'll get the notice out, and I'll let you guys know when it's gonna be. So it'll either be 5 or 5:30 next Thursday.
Should anyone else, like, does the assessor's office work with the clerk? I mean,
No, really,
Okay.
Mike, I mean, they do, but Mike is really the person that we
Right.
need.
he's just giving
Yeah,
data.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they come to him with questions and he gives them answers,
Right.
but
Right.
yeah, it's
Okay.
really up to us and with Mike's input, because obviously he
He's
has years
done,
of
yeah.
experience.
Okay,
Okay, so we'll say 5 or 5:30 on July 1st. Okay. We'll try that. If it doesn't work, I'll get back to you with a different date. I put supervisor update on there, but I think I've already covered the things I wanted to update. So, and then I put on the executive session in case I have a little bit of update to give you on that topic. We could go into executive session. It's not really a discussion. It's more just an update. I could probably just tell it to you after the meeting.
There
So,
you go, as long as that's kosher.
well, no, we probably should go into executive session.
Yeah.
Let's do it legal. Let's be sure.
Yeah, I thought you meant you were gonna go into executive.
Yeah, let's go
but
into,
are we gonna, should we let the public know that we will not be?
yeah, but let's
Okay.
just get ready. We'll make the motion and then I'll announce.
Okay.
We have to come back out and reconvene, but we're not gonna, so I'll make the motion in the town of Rochester Town Board. Motions to enter into executive session for the purposes of discussion of the proposed acquisition, sale, or lease of real property. I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Second, Aaron. Roll call, please.
Councilwoman Anowen,
Aye.
Councilwoman Hogan Depew,
Aye.
Mr. Hewitt's not here. Mr. Councilman Paddock
Aye.
and Supervisor Brayton.
Aye. Okay, and that's at 9:18 PM. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, wait,
Yeah.
we just did that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm still like halfway in Zoom mode and halfway not in Zoom mode.
Also, it's
Apologies.
9:18.
Yes,
Yes.
got that, 9:18. For the public, we will be exiting into executive session. We will be reconvening with no expected business being taken. So thank you all for your patience with our first in-person YouTube broadcast. And hopefully we will get the bugs worked out in the future. So I'm gonna stop recording.
At least it says that to
Yeah.
you now. I like that.
Do you want me to take the folders or, oh, you have all the bills?
I'll take the bills. I gotta run over to the office. If you want me, I'll bring the folders too if you want.
Mine's